What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit a million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah!
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Swing and a line drive, base hit left field. That's headed to the wall, and headed home is Trey Turner, and the Phillies have won Game 2. Nick Castellanos with the RBI knock, and the Phillies walk it off, and this series is even at a game apiece.
I don't know how he's done it, played 162 games, because he's just a workhorse, and I'm so happy for him because I know that there's been a lot of talk about Chase and this and that, but he can hit. I mean, he can hit. That was a big night for him tonight. You know, the home run to tie it up, and then the base hit to win it. He's just been grinding all year.
Rob Thompson, Nick Castellanos, you heard the game live on 97.3 ESPN. That's how it went down. A come from behind, a heart stopper. A much-needed heart stopper as the Phillies tie the series up 1-1 with a come-from-behind win. The ninth inning, Nick Castellanos, consistent Nick, is back. Welcome, everybody, to the Fanatics Sportsbook at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. The Sports Bash is live. I'm Mike Gill. Bob Wankel's with me for the show today. Pete G is our on-site producer. Josh Henning is back in the Ocean Casino Resort studios. We are at Ocean Casino Resort. I can't imagine what the scene was in here yesterday. Can you imagine what it was like? 2-0, 3-0, 3-3, back and forth. What a game. What a game, man.
Yeah, especially at a sports book. I'm sure there were some anxious folks in here
you think so?
for a couple hours yesterday, those first 6 innings.
How many crunched up tickets are in that trash can over there? And then re-pulled back out, like trying to uncrinkle them to see if they worked?
Yeah, pair that up with the NFL tickets, and I'm sure it was an interesting day down here.
I don't even know where to start. I mean, Saturday, awful game. You get the leadoff homer, and you're thinking all this layoff talk, the rust, and he comes out, Schwarber hits a bomb. That place must have been unhinged. And then nothing. Kerplunk. We can talk about the decisions in that game. You know, Wheeler, 111 pitches. They take him out. You go to Strahm. You go to Hoffman. That's the blueprint. And the blueprint, like you've gone to all year, your most trusted assets, they turn their back on you.
Yeah, and I mean, that was what was so deflating about the Game 1 loss. You feel like this is our best shot. Our guy went out and shoved for 7 innings, and then you walk out of the Citizens Bank Park down 1-0, and you go, okay, even if we get even if we knot this thing up, so you needed that energy yesterday. That type of win, I think, was kind of rejuvenating. I think it's reset everybody. You say, okay, they're the better team. Now you go up to New York and you do what you have to do. And if nothing else, you split, you come back for Game 5. You have arguably the best pitcher, big game postseason pitcher active right now in Zach Wheeler.
Do you have any, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the Saturday game, but a 111, I mean, you got to make that decision, right? I mean, are we in a world that 111 pitches means you got to take that guy out, or is this the playoffs, you got to empty the tank?
Yeah,
What's the decision there?
I think Rob's decision was to bring Wheeler back out in the 7th, and then that was pushing it. So in his mind, there was no world where he was going back out there 111 plus for the 8th inning. Strahm and Hoffman are two of the best relievers in the National League. This is the blueprint. These guys have to lock down outs late in games, and if they don't, it's not going to work. So to me, it was a no-brainer to bring in Hoffman in that spot. It didn't work out. And it was a tough loss.
It was. I mean, it was deflating. I mean, Saturday, we can get into it all. 609-403-0973 on the text board. 609-403-0973. I ended up going to Delaware. I was at the Dewey Beach Country Club Bar. That place was rocking. It was packed. It was Dewey Goes Pink weekend. So it was a breast cancer walk. 5,000 people were a part of this walk. I mean, these bars were pouring with people out, and this place was stunned. It was stunned silence in this place. It was awful energy. But I had a great time thanks to the people down there at the Dewey Country Club. It's not a country club like a golf course. That's just the name of the bar. Very golf theme in there. But I couldn't believe how crazy it was. You always think to yourself, how do you hit a home run to start this place? The place is juiced, and then you can get nothing afterwards. I mean,
the shadows.
The shadows, right. I will say this. Major League Baseball has to do it better. For 162 games, you play at 7 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then your biggest games of the year, you put them at a time that you play, once or twice the whole year? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's not a great look. And listen, I mean, you're talking about being down in Dewey, and that sounds awesome. You and I had very different viewing experiences this weekend. I was on my deck with a 19-month-old and a 3-year-old tugging at my shirt as I was watching the Phillies implode in the 8th inning. So it was
Saturday.
It wasn't great. Like,
well, hey, listen, playoff time. I said I wanted to do something a little different, so we took the ferry over there, got into a spot, had a great spot, and I got to tell you, it was awesome. But yesterday was a little different for me. I'm driving home because we didn't take the ferry home. We drove all the way around. So here I am on Route 1 in Delaware watching on my phone from the first inning to the 5th inning. I pull into my driveway, and here comes Bryce Harper. The Bryce Harper home run really changes the complexion of what this team is right now, because without that, they obviously probably don't win this game. But that home run sets the tone. And then Nick Castellanos, who, by the way, I have been ultra tough on, and I'm not saying I'm out of the weeds on this yet. Why? Because, Bob Wankel, we have seen him carry this team in the DS last year. He was unbelievable against the Braves. It was the CS that has me a little bit, a little trepidation on buying into Castellanos. But he did what he did in the DS last year. He carried the team. He hits the home run to tie it, then the game-winning hit. But that home run by Bryce Harper changes the narrative. But God almighty, the Mets, they keep coming back. You get the Nimmo home run. They get the lead again. But then, we're going to get into this a little bit later. Stott, my buddy texted me before the game. What, is Thompson on crack? He's got Stott in the 5-hole. I said, well, he did hit there all year last year.
Group messages across the Delaware Valley yesterday had to be an absolute cesspool.
Yes.
Real-time reactions.
I said,
horrible takes,
here's the
myself
thing.
included.
Yes, here's the thing. Okay, so when they had Stott in the 5-hole, what's your reaction?
For a championship team, that's a pretty light-hitting 5-hole hitter.
Well, last year he hit in the 5-hole all pro season, and they came up short. I get that. But I guess the answer is I don't like him in the 5-hole either, but they just don't have a guy to hit there. They just don't have a guy with Bohm going the way we can get into the Bohm stuff. JT just hasn't been an impactful bat. Marsh has been utter nothingness. So they really just don't have a guy to hit in that spot. So they went back to Old Faithful, the guy that carried them in that spot. I don't say carried them, but he had some big hits for them. Obviously, the Marlins Grand Slam sticks out. But to hit that ball, the triple down the line, I mean, whew, my gosh, what an unbelievable moment.
Yeah, if nothing else, I mean, it's been a tough year for Bryson Stott. There's no question about it. He's definitely taken a step backward this year. He kind of thought that maybe he'd be a fringe all-star player and has not materialized like a lot of people, myself included, thought it would. But he still does have a knack to perform in the big moment. And he did it again in a huge spot last night. And you hope that when he gets his next start, which might not be tomorrow, that he's able to kind of build on that and continue to deliver for this team, because it does seem like they're a little bit short offensively again. As you get up into the October, you face better pitching. You just wish they had a little bit more thump. And Mike, we can talk about the starters. We can talk about the issues of Strom and Hoffman and all of these different X factors. To me, the biggest thing does come back to Nick Castellanos. Can you get somebody to consistently protect Bryce Harper and make teams pay for pitching around him? And last night they got it.
Well, I thought they brought it up a lot during the broadcast. Who's doing the game? Perzinski.
It's Adam Amin.
And Wainwright, yes.
Yeah.
They brought it up multiple times. You know, if it's me, I'm making sure someone other than Harper beats me. I have to. Nick Castellanos has to be the guy that beats me. So, look, I don't blame them for pitching around Harper and going after Castellanos, but the Phillies are going to need consistent Casty. You know, it's the question. I think it was the biggest question going in. We went back and forth. The people coming at me on the text board, he's done this all season long since the All-Star break. His numbers is great. I saw him carry this team in the DS last year, and then in the CS, he was atrocious. So, he's not out of the woods yet, but they need every ounce of this.
There's always going to be runs with any hitter, especially, though, a guy like Nick Castellanos, who is more reactionary. It's see-ball, hit ball. It's being aggressive. He's going to go after pitches outside of the zone. You're not just going to change your entire DNA on the fly as a hitter, but what you can do is you can kind of mitigate some of that over-aggressiveness and really try to lock in and understand what your opponent is trying to do to you. And we saw that yesterday, and then he got some mistakes and he took advantage of it. Can he run that back? Can he keep that going? Yeah, that's going to be a big question. But look, he has been, which seems crazy to say, one of their most consistent performers, and this goes all the way back to late April, May. Every time you and I talked, you'd ask me, how much longer can they do this Nick Castellanos thing? And I said to you, and look, I've had a lot of horrible takes. I mean, you could play him back. We could do an entire montage where you'd be like, this guy's an idiot. But I said to you then, and I mean, it did kind of bear itself out to be true. He represented the most upside of anybody they had in the outfield. They needed it to work, and that's why you continue to go to him game in, game out, even though it was so bad to watch. And he's made it pay off. And without him, they're in a mighty big trouble.
Well,
right now.
and a lot of that's because, the other guy, Bohm, he's the guy that, they went to in the 4-hole last year. Why? Because Castellanos got so cold in the CS, they had to put Bohm in the 4-hole, and then Bohm had his moments, and then, Bohm, I don't know what's wrong with him now, whether it's this hand problem or he's just really pressing or struggling. He gets benched yesterday. I mean, Bohm gets benched in the game. Before the game yesterday, they go to Sosa because Bohm has been that bad. So if you're not going to have Bohm in the lineup, think about it. This guy started in the National League All-Star game. He's your most consistent guy for most of the season. I mean, the guy almost drives in 100 runs. He ends up getting hurt late in the year, and I think that kind of derails him from the 100 RBIs. But to not have him or be able to count on him, that even heightens the pressure on what Castellanos needs, because we just talked about it. You got to put Stott in the 5-hole because, quite frankly, you can't trust Bohm right now. And listen, I like Bohm probably more than anybody else out there, and I've been tough on Castellanos.
You definitely like him more than I do. I will say that.
I will admit, I like Bohm probably more than most people out there, and Castellanos I've been very tough on. But right now, Castellanos is obviously the guy you can trust more than Bohm. That being said, they need both of them. They need both of them.
Yeah, I mean, look, the decision to start Edmundo Sosa at third base yesterday and sit Alec Bohm is pretty intriguing. Now, a couple minutes ago, Rob Thompson met with reporters up in New York and said that Alec Bohm will be back in the lineup for Game 3. But I just don't buy it. I mean, look, I don't buy what Rob said about trying to infuse energy into the lineup. Number one, since this team was eliminated in Game 7 last year, it was all about getting back to October. There's no way that this team doesn't have enough energy or enough oomph for the moment in the second game of the playoffs. So to me, I think you have to look a little bit deeper here. Is it about the fact that Alec Bohm was 2 for his last 27? Is it about the fact that he seems to have a temper tantrum every time something doesn't go his way lately?
Well, there's a whole, he benches Bohm if it's performance. You could pick any guy right now for performance. You could pick
any guy, but he's been especially bad. And I don't know if it has anything to do with lingering injury issues with the hand.
And Thompson went out of his way to say he has not said.
And when you do that, when you say, hey, look, it's not injury-based, he is healthy, you're not doing the player any favor. You are making a proclamation that we have a must-win game today. Our season's on the line. This guy had 44 doubles last year, or this season, and if he didn't get hurt, he would have knocked in over 100 runs, and we're not going to play him.
Yeah.
So what does that say about their confidence level in this guy right now?
And as Bob, as we just said, he's hitting in the middle of your lineup. I mean, so to pull your guy out who was hitting 4th or 5th for most of the season and say, we're going to take him out, and then we're going to replace him with Bryson Stott in the 5-hole, I mean, you had to be really down on this player. So I don't know what the big picture is now. He's going to be back in the lineup. I don't want to go too far into what's next, but now you got a decision. Do you keep Stott in the lineup and keep him at second base, or do you shift Sosa against a lefty? Sean Manaea is pitching on Tuesday, and they're going to go with another lefty on Wednesday. So you're getting back-to-back lefties here. So Marsh, I would imagine, is possibly out of the lineup. What do you do with Stott? He's hitting in the 5-hole.
Yeah, I mean, my suspicion is that Edmundo Sosa is going to play second base in Game 3.
Get ready for the takes.
And look, if you go lefty-righty, platoon splits, all that stuff, but I mean, Edmundo Sosa is 4 for 8 against Sean Manaea, lifetime. Has a homer, has a double, so he's gotten some good looks off of him. Bryson Stott has not handled left-handed pitching very well this season in particular. Has a little bit of a history with Manaea, nothing crazy. Bohm is actually the guy who has the worst numbers of the 3. Go figure. He's 2 for 9. Nothing wild, but it's all small sample size stuff. But if Bohm's playing and Rob committed to it, he was not committing to Bryson Stott or Brandon Marsh to be in the lineup in Game 3. That lets me believe. And I mean, I've been around Rob. I haven't been down there very often here in this season, but I've covered Rob. I've been to these press conferences. You can kind of decipher the code. I think you're getting Edmundo Sosa tomorrow.
What's the moment in the game last night? Where does this game flip back to Philly, turn to Philly? Because you're down 3-0, and then obviously you tie it up. Then you go back down 4-3. So now you're down 4-3 after you fought, after you get the momentum, and then you caught the momentum right back up. And then, my gosh, you bring in Strahm in the 9th. We can get into that decision as well. As Estevez comes in, throws 8 pitches. Now, you and I have talked about Estevez. We don't trust him all that much. Do you stick with Estevez here? But where's the moment in this game that is the second-guess moment for New York?
If you're New York, where did you go wrong?
I mean, to put yourselves in position to lose that game.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, look, Severino was so good, and it just escalated on him so quickly. So was it did they roll with him too long? I don't think so, because it was just boom, boom in the blink of an eye. It wasn't a slow build up to that 3-run outburst there. You know where I think that they might actually deserve a little bit of criticism is you get into the 8th inning. Like, I thought that they were a little bit scared in the 8th. I really do. When you walk through that sequence and you get Stott up into that spot, it just, to me, it was like they probably could have elected to go after Harper a little bit more aggressively.
Ooh. And Diaz did admit that he kind of tiptoed around him a little bit.
Yeah.
I
mean, when you have a lead.
Do you have a problem
and you're
with
putting
them?
the time, that's where you lose me a little bit.
Do you have a problem with them going to Diaz in the 7th?
No, I mean, just considering how good he's been against Schwarber, and conversely how bad Schwarber has been against Diaz, that was a huge spot.
See, I don't have a problem with it.
I don't have a problem going to him
tomorrow.
in the 7th. I do have a problem. I have a little bit of a problem going back to him to start the 8th, though. I mean, Diaz has worked a ton for the Mets.
He has.
In over the last week and a half, especially. And you just wonder. And there's been signs that he's sort of leaking oil a little bit. And you maybe just say, hey, you got us that key out against Schwarber. Thanks.
It's a tough one because I do see what the Mets, what Mendoza's doing here. He's saying, this game right here, if we can win this game, we're off tomorrow, we're up 2-0, you're not beating us 3 times in a row. So he's almost saying, this game here, I'm going with my best guy, and I'm doing everything I can to get it. The problem is, if you don't get it, what is the repercussions of that? And I don't know. You get a day off. Is Diaz now not available? I would imagine he's available Tuesday.
I think that they would strongly prefer to stay away from him an additional day, but the situation is such that you got to go all in. You have to. This is a huge game tomorrow. I mean, I think it's fair to say the winner of Game 3 probably wins the series.
I would concur that the winner tomorrow, you got to feel pretty strongly. I mean, you're in a situation too. If you're Philadelphia, think about this. Oh, home field. You got to get the home field. You got to get the number 1 seed. You've lost 3 straight home games. Yeah. I mean, this whole Red October, the crowd's nuts. You lost the 2 games against Arizona. Then you lose Game 1, and you're almost ready to lose 4 straight games at home until Castellanos bails you out.
Well, it's interesting that you bring this up, and I do wonder a little bit, do you fall into this trap of I don't want to use the word complacency, but do you maybe get a little overconfident? You say, like, this atmosphere, this crowd, Red October, the bank will be rocking. Do you kind of use that as a little bit of a crutch? Like it's a foregone conclusion that you're going to take care of business at home. And I think that, though they won't admit it, I think there was a little bit of that last year against Arizona. Once you take that series lead 3-2 and you come back to Philly, I think that there was maybe just like a hint of additional comfort, where maybe all the attention to detail wasn't quite there. You go up to New York, though. You're going into a hostile environment. Like this, you have this team's full attention going up to Citi Field this week. Yes,
that's a good point. It just, man, I mean, what you had I guess, like, how do the Mets feel about, like, the way they lost that game? You got to be thinking, oh, my gosh, but they've got to be thrilled that they got the first one, and then they're in that game yesterday.
I think if you privately asked anybody in the Mets going into the start of the series, if you split in Philadelphia, are you feeling good about that? And they probably all would have signed up for
Absolutely.
it.
After what they've gone, they haven't played a home game since September 21st.
You know, but what's interesting about it, too, is if you watch the Mets against the Brewers and then what transpired this weekend, they just are not. I don't want to make the mistake of taking anything away from them because I think they're a dangerous team and I think they very well could win this series. So I don't want to. I don't want to mischaracterize it.
Don't you feel going home and now I have two lefties back to back here? Like, don't you feel like, hey, we got one and now we're going home and we have two lefties?
You absolutely do have to feel good about it. But a lot of this run has been. And again, I don't want to diminish what they've done here, but a lot of this run has kind of been like magic pixie dust, like where we don't do anything for 7 innings and then all of a sudden we hit a key home run or we string together 5 hits against 2 of the National League's best relievers. And there's been a lot of like magic to this, and there's a belief, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think that losing yesterday just totally gets rid of all of that and extinguishes it for the Mets. But this is one where you say, like, all right, we let an opportunity go here. But to their credit, they did the same thing against Milwaukee, bounced back, end up winning late. I just think you have two good teams that are dialed in right now. It's going to. I think that the ending of this series is going to be much like the beginning of it. I don't think that the mental part of splitting really helps or hurts either team at this point.
You know, this series is unbelievable so far. I mean, the first game, even though, I mean, it's a 1-0 game into the 7th inning, and then the Mets kind of pour on a couple there. So the last couple innings of game 1, but there's so many, moments and decisions. You got Strahm, you got Hoffman, and the two of the most reliable guys you got, they let you down in game 1. Then you go to game 2. Sanchez is pitching a pretty good game, but obviously you go to Ruiz in that spot.
I sent my podcast partner, Anthony Sanfilippo, a text message in the 6th inning yesterday, and I said, I wish that somebody in my life believed in my mediocrity the way that Rob Thompson believes in Jose Ruiz's mediocrity. And I don't want to hear about the 1.99 ERA post-All-Star break. Jose Ruiz is not the guy in that spot.
So where do you go there? Because Kerkering obviously gives up a dinger.
Yeah, I'm still going to just ride my best guys. I'm going to go Kerkering in the 6th and just play inning by inning and see how things go. If the Mets get up 6-0, then sure, yeah, here you go, Jose Ruiz. I know, and again, he's been good. He's done a nice job for the Phillies. He has a place on this team, all those things. I just did not think that was the right spot for him yesterday.
I agree. When he went to Ruiz, it felt like one of those things. It's like, you're not down 5-0 in the game.
You have to win this game, Rob.
It's your season. It's still right there. Yeah. You got to hold them. And he obviously gives up the home run and makes it 3-0 to Alonso. Yeah. It's another opposite fielder for Pete Alonso. And at that moment, you're thinking, oh my God. I mean, no life at all. In
that moment, you kind of felt like, look, it's only 3 runs, but the way they had been swinging the bats, the way that the momentum of the game felt, you just sort of, it did. I'm sure that everybody, if they were being honest, probably felt like they were in a world of trouble at that point. But as far as bullpen usage goes, you can try to match up however you want. If your best guys aren't going to perform, then you're in a lot of trouble. And right now, the Phillies, 3 of their 4 best relievers are not throwing the ball particularly well.
Max in Ventnor says the series scares me right now. It feels that the Mets are playing to win and the Phillies are playing not to lose. A weird vibe, but maybe just me. You get that vibe?
I think the Mets just have a lot of belief right now, and, maybe that
Your
moment...
Your point is a good one, though. How many times can you hit that home run in the big moment? How many times can you get that big hit in the big moment? At some point, that goes from your scorching hot... Hey, we saw it with Nick Castellanos. At some point, you stop hitting a home run every time you're up or a double every time you're up, and then you're 0 for 14 with 13 strikeouts. That happens. That hits you hard. We'll see. So much to get into from the weekend. And don't forget, tomorrow, the game at 5 o'clock. You can listen right here on 97.3 ESPN. It's Aaron Nola. They went with Sanchez in game 2, and now you got the Nola coaster. Is it going to be the good Nola or the bad Nola? They got Sean Manaea going. And then Ranger Suarez on Wednesday against Jose Quintana. Lefty for the Mets. Oh, boy.
Bullpen better be ready, Mike.
We're just cooking. We're just getting started. Fanatic Sportsbook here at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City joins us on the other side. Now, we know Mike's a Met fan.
Mr. Met.
Mr. Met. But he was there, covered it last night for the Press of Atlantic City. Asked an interesting question to Rob Thompson after the game. So we'll get his perspective on it. Doug Glanville at 3 o'clock today. He was on the national ESPN radio call, which you heard right here on 97.3 ESPN. So we'll get his perspective at 3 o'clock and your perspective throughout the day. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973 on the text board. If you're watching the show on the X platform and YouTube at Mike Gill Show, he's Bob Wankel. I'm Mike Gill, and this is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
It's this. The Humana Gold Plus Give Back Medicare Advantage Plan gives you $1,368 back each year in your Social Security check. Choose coverage that helps you keep more money in your pocket. Learn more at GetHumana.com. Humana, a more human way to healthcare. The Part B Give Back benefit pays part or all of your Part B premium, and the amount may change based on the amount you pay for Part B. Limitations and restrictions may apply. Humana is a Medicare Advantage HMO and PPO organization with a Medicare contract. Enrollment in any Humana plan depends on contract renewal.
Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Harper at third. Castellanos at first. 3-2. Swing and a liner. Base hit down the right field line. Rolling towards the corner. Harper is in. Here comes Castellanos. He's on his way to the plate, and he's in. Stott into third, and the Phillies have the lead.
You know, it's a bunch of experienced guys. They've been through it before. I think they've got a slow heartbeat, and they understand situations, and they just keep battling. It's a very resilient club, and you can see the same thing with the Mets. They're not going to quit either. So this is shaping up to be a classic battle.
That was Rob Thompson, and, of course, the Stott triple. The Stott triple. It's another big hit for Stott in the playoffs. He hit the grand slam against the Marlins last year. Sports Bash Live, Mike Gill, Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad. And, of course, we're live at the Fanatics Sportsbook. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, was there yesterday. All right, Mike, give us the roller coaster of emotion. When's the moment that the game slips away from the Mets? Was there a moment that you're watching and you thought the Mets, they lost their opportunity right there?
It was in, I believe, the sixth inning when Bryce Harper hit the ball 431 feet off of the batter's eye in center field. Until that point, the Mets were in absolute control. The Phillies were dead in the water. That stadium was quiet. The fans were on edge. They were beginning to get a little nasty. The boos were starting to mount. But as I wrote today in my story at pressofac.com, in October, one swing of the bat can change the narrative, and Bryce Harper did it again with that blast in the sixth inning off the batter's eye in center field.
Well, he gets the home run, and then Castellanos follows it up to tie the game, but then the Mets get the Nimmo home run to kind of take the lead back. At that moment, did you feel that the Mets kind of recaptured that momentum?
Not really. At 4-3, one-run lead, to me is almost the same as a tie game. I knew both teams' bullpens were going to carry it the rest of the way. To be honest with you, I didn't have faith in either team's bullpen as the game progressed, and it eventually came down to almost who was the last team at the plate, and that was the Phillies, and they took advantage. So at 4-3, I did not feel good about the Mets' chances. I still felt like it was anybody's game, only because the bullpens, I figured were going to be shaky, and they were.
Mike, what's up, man? Good to talk to you. I guess, fellow writer here, right? And we love narratives and we love storylines. I guess my question is, after the way things played out yesterday, Phillies get this huge win. Now we're all talking about Phillies having the momentum. Do you think the Mets care? Do you think the Mets care about the momentum element of it? Or do you kind of expect this team to be, given they're so battle-tested and they've been so resilient, do you just think that they let it roll right off of them and they're back at it Game 3 and are going to continue to compete? Or do you feel like the Mets kind of blew their opportunity to win this series yesterday?
No, I don't think so at all. I think what the first thing you said, I think the Mets have been through so much, right, this season and in the past week. Atlanta, the game in Atlanta, the first game of the doubleheader last Monday. they're in the ninth inning down 2-0 against the Milwaukee Brewers, facing elimination on Thursday night. If you think about it, if you're looking at it from the Mets' perspective, you say, hey, we went to Philly. We got what we wanted. We got a split. The next 2 games are in Citi Field. We have our best pitcher going in Game 3 in Sean Manaea. And then in Game 4, the Phillies are throwing Ranger Suarez out there. And the Mets got to figure that they can probably hit Ranger a little bit. So if I'm the Mets, I'm feeling good about what they did in Philadelphia. And if I'm the Mets, I'm feeling good just to be home. The Mets haven't been home since that Sunday night game against the Phillies the weekend before the season ended. So I think they've been on the road like 15 straight days. They're back in Citi Field. Citi Field is going to be a raucous place tomorrow night. And if I'm the Mets, I like my chances with Sean Manaea on the mound and the matchup on Thursday with Rangers or on Wednesday with Ranger Suarez throwing for the Phillies.
Kind of curious what you thought about the Phillies bullpen. I mean, starters go 13 combined innings and give up two earned runs, and then I guess it was 12 combined innings, 2 earned runs, and then the relievers go 6 innings and give up 10 earned. Obviously, pretty uncharacteristic based on how good those 2 guys have been. And I'm talking about Strahm and Hoffman specifically. What do you think happened there? It looked like the Mets were just prepared for everything they were getting from Phillies relievers in the first 2 games. Luck? Are they just dialed in? Did they have something on them? What was the deal there?
Yeah, good. I mean, great question. I mean, JT Realmuto mentioned after yesterday's game that the Mets hitters seem to get better against the Phillies relievers, which is something you don't often see in baseball. You see a lot of those late inning relievers able to come in and shut down their opponents. Bob, to me, it's confounding because the Phillies relievers seem to be up on Mets hitters in every count, 0-2, 1-2, and they just can't put them away. The Mets are grinding these at-bats. I think Matt Strahm threw 17 pitches on Saturday.
He didn't throw a ball on Saturday.
He didn't throw a ball. So the dumbest question of all time is there a thing as throwing too many strikes? I mean, should these guys be throwing pitches off the plate at 0-2, 1-2, trying to get the Mets to chase? I just think they're throwing too many pitches over the heart of the plate or too many strikes, and the Mets are grinding out at bats and taking advantage. But it's a big problem for the Phillies. I think their bullpen ERA in this series is above 16. So that obviously is not going to sell. And it's not only, it's not like one guy struggling. It's Strahm, it's Hoffman, Kirkland gives it up. If you had told me before the series that their best bullpen guy would be Estevez, I would have told you were crazy, but he got through an inning in 8 pitches yesterday. So,
yeah, Mike, what about that? What about the decision to go to Strahm in the ninth? Was Thompson asked about why Strahm in the ninth over Hoffman, or why not go back to Estevez in the ninth? Why Strahm yesterday?
Well, I mean, nobody really kind of asked that after the game because you got so much stuff going on after the game. But you make a great point in thinking about it today. I thought 2 decisions were peculiar. Ruiz in the 6th inning for me was a little peculiar there. I mean, I just think there's too big a spot for him. I know he pitched well during the regular season, but this is the playoffs. And you're down in that inning, and you're going to Ruiz there. I don't know about that move right there. And then, you could have brought back Estevez after he only threw 8 pitches in the 8th inning. A little surprised he didn't come back out for the 9th with the way he threw in the 8th inning there and the way Strahm and Hoffman had thrown the day before. So, some questions there. That's also the great thing about playoff baseball. Rob Thompson, until about Bryce Harper hit a home run, was having a bit of a rough day yesterday, basically. But again, in October, one swing can change everything, and that's what happened yesterday.
You and I have had a lot of conversations over the past couple of years down at the stadium, and I think I've articulated my stance that I'm not the number one Alec Bohm fan. I think there's a lot of deficiencies in his game, and I respect the numbers, and he's an above average major league hitter, but I think there's a lot of flaws there. I'm sure that you were surprised.
Are you taking a shot at me?
Mike and I just disagree on this one a little bit. But look, I mean, I think everybody was surprised that he wasn't in the lineup yesterday. I think the idea that it was Edmundo Sosa in his place to inject life into the lineup is nonsense. What was your take on why that happened?
Well, I think two things. I agree with you. If you're turning to Armando Sosa for energy, you're in a lot of trouble. And then that's what I talked about, Rob Thompson having a rough day up until the sixth inning because, you put Sosa in the game and he makes a throwing error early in the game, and then he has a couple of horrible at-bats. And for a team that chases pitches out of the zone, the number one offender on that list for the Phillies is Armando Sosa. So I didn't really understand the decision. I look at it two ways. And there's no doubt Bohm has been struggling since September 1st. He has been in a funk. The body language is terrible. The smashing of the helmets, the throwing of the equipment is ridiculous. Were they sending him a message that they aren't going to tolerate it? Or here's what I think, too. Remember last year, after last year's playoff, Rob Thompson stuck with his guys. He didn't pinch hit for Rojas, I think, in what it was, Game 7. And when he was asked after the playoffs, he said, I would have done some things differently. I wouldn't have been as patient as I was this year. I think Rob Thompson was kind of sending a message to the team a little bit, saying, hey, guys, look, it's now or never time. We got to go here. And how do you send that message? Well, you're not benching Bryce Harper. You're not benching Trey Turner. You're not benching JT Realmuto. You're not benching Kyle Schwarber. Who's next up on the list? Alec Bohm. So you send Alec Bohm down, and you hope that message of urgency gets across to the team. Now, having said that, then they put Bohm up in the eighth inning against Budo, and I know he has tremendous numbers about Budo, and Bohm has one of the worst at-bats I've ever seen. He swings at the first pitch and pops out. So did he get the message from the benching? Apparently not, by the way his two at-bats were when he finally got in the game.
And I guess that's kind of what concerns me because you noted it, the smashing the helmets, throwing the bats, I don't know what word you want to use, tantrums or just these outward displays of frustration. I think it's fair to say that you don't know exactly how Alec's going to take certain things. He's not exactly the most even-keel guy. So, one of Rob's strengths and something that we all point to is his handle of the clubhouse and having having the pulse of the clubhouse. But I do wonder how Alec Bohm's going to respond to that. He's going to play tomorrow. He's going to be an integral part of their lineup in Game 3. Is Alec going to say, all right, message sent, I got it, and go out there and put together decent at-bats? Or are you losing him? Are you sending him a message saying, like, look, I don't trust you. We were in a must-win game yesterday, and you weren't part of our lineup. And you're a guy that had been hitting cleanup for the bulk of this season. It's a heck of a message to send. You wonder how he responds to it.
You get to a point of the season where the ceiling of your team with Bohm is higher than the ceiling of your team with my buddies text me all the time, like, you got to get Rojas out, you got to play Clemens, you got to get this guy out, you got to play. I said, listen, your problem's not Rojas and Clemens. You need your stars to hit, and Bohm is considered one of those guys that you need to hit, is he not?
See, I push back on that a little bit, just this idea that you need your stars to hit. Like, of course you do, but to me that's an oversimplification. When you have a team that's not putting together good at-bats and struggling to score runs, you need to get every advantage that you can in your lineup, every situational advantage. And, I think that that's the thing that they did wrong last year. If our guys hit, then it doesn't matter that Johan Rojas doesn't. It doesn't. To me, you have to get every incremental advantage you can in a series that is so tightly played like this one. So if you do believe that Edmundo Sosa gives you 1% better than Alec Bohm, if that's what you truly believe, then you have to do it.
Ironically, Rojas had the only hit when he got pulled from the game. Mike McGarry, are you playing Sosa against a lefty tomorrow at second or Stott staying in?
You know what? Stott had a big hit last night. Now, today, up in New York, I know, looking at the transcript of what was said, Rob Thompson was asked that, and he didn't commit to Stott or Marsh in the lineup tomorrow against the lefties. And I guess the Mets throwing a lefty on Wednesday also. So, I was just so unimpressed by the way that Sosa played yesterday, and Stott gets that big triple down the line. I would be tempted to try to play Stott in there and maybe say, hey, maybe he has figured something out or, maybe he's headed in the right direction. Look, I think one of the big issues that this team is going to face after the season is going to be, the future of their younger players. You mentioned Bohm. I agree with you. Is there a chance that they lose Bohm because they bench him for a key game? And then the flip side of that is, well, if you do lose him, do you want him in the first place on your team if he's that mentally fragile? But the future of Bohm, Marsh, and Stott especially if this team doesn't make it to a World Series or win a World Series, is going to be a huge off-season topic for him. So to me, to answer your question, look, Bryson Stott hasn't hit a fastball at the top of the zone since last season, basically. And Edwin Diaz went in the game and threw him a slider that hung right over the plate, and he pulled it down the right field line for a huge triple. To me, I like Bryson Stott. I like his defense. He showed it with a great play yesterday again. I don't like the way Sosa played yesterday, the error, the poor at-bats. To me, I'm saying to myself, hey, maybe Stott found something, capitalizing on that Diaz mistake. Maybe he's going to get hot. I'll ride the hot hand. I'll put, Stott at second base instead of Sosa.
And Marsh?
Marsh, I'm not playing against left-handed hitters. Like, Mike, you could get on the mound and throw left-handed, and you'd get Brandon Marsh. So I'm not playing Brandon Marsh. Why do you have Austin Hayes? If Austin Hayes isn't going to play against left-handed pitchers with Brandon Marsh's record against left-handed pitchers, then Austin Hayes shouldn't be on the team. So Brandon Marsh does not play. I try to ride the hot hand with Bryson Stott at second base.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, PressOfAC.com. And, of course, Game 3 tomorrow at Citi Field. You going up to Citi Tuesday and Wednesday?
Yes, I will be up there tomorrow and for Game 4. And I think we will all be back at Citizens Bank Park on Game 5 for Wheeler, and I guess it would be Severino on Game 5 Friday night. I think this goes back to Philadelphia for Game 5, and at that point, I think it's a baseball game. It's a ball that drops in here. It's a key hit. It's a home run there. I think this is anybody's series, and it's just going to be a classic. I mean, I don't know how you guys felt, but I thought yesterday's baseball game was one of the best baseball games I've seen in person, and one of the best, Phillies playoff games, I've seen since, 2007. I think it's up there with the Bedlam at the Bank game. It's up there with, there's been great ones. A Holiday no-hitter, obviously. The game, they win the World Series against Tampa in 2008. I thought yesterday's game, for the drama, the back and forth, was just, I thought it was a little hokey, but I thought Bryce Harper was right. Rocky would have been proud. It was like Rocky and Apollo Creed going toe-to-toe. So it was outstanding.
All right, Mike McGarry, he'll be there on Tuesday and Wednesday. You can listen to both of those games, and if there's a Game 5, right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Mike, we'll talk to you Wednesday, man.
All right, guys, enjoy the rest of the day. We'll see you later.
Well, I tell you what, he's not wrong about that. I was at in fact, I think it was to the day, the Holiday no-hitter. I was at that game, and obviously a no-hitter is better than what you saw yesterday, but in terms of an unbelievable game, I don't know, which game would you have rather been at, the no-hitter or yesterday's?
Probably yesterday's, but I wouldn't mind mixing in a 10-0 win tomorrow. How about that?
Ooh. Can you get that? Interesting storylines tomorrow. We'll continue to look back. Doug Glanville, former Philly, he's now part of the ESPN radio broadcast team that you heard right here on 97.3 ESPN. He'll have the call tomorrow right here on 97.3 ESPN. He'll join us at 3 o'clock. We'll get his perspective on the game, the flow, the decisions, and who he would play moving forward. He's sticking with Stott. He's making some changes. Is Bone back in the lineup? It sounds like he will be. That's all coming up still on the Sports Bash Live at the Fanatics Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Booking Games here at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
You're listening to the...
Okay, how weird does it feel to be called someone's fiancé? The first time you hear it, you do a double take. Your heart kind of flutters, and before you know it, you go from let's just enjoy the moment to we're planning a fall wedding. That's where Zola comes in. Zola has everything you need to plan your wedding in one place and have fun along the way. From free planning tools like a budget tracker and website to a venue and vendor discovery tool that matches you with your dream team. Everything on Zola is designed to make your wedding journey as easy as possible. And with invites that can be completely customized and a wedding registry packed with gifts you actually want. Zola takes you from save our date to thanks so much without breaking a sweat. From getting engaged to getting married, Zola has everything you need to plan your wedding in one place. Start planning at Zola.com. That's ZOLA.com.
with Mike Gill.
And it just keeps getting better.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform and YouTube at Mike Gill Show. I'm Mike Gill. That's Bob Wankel. All right, Bob, we got so much more here. I mean, this game had it all, man. It had everything, as Mike said, one of the best games just being at, the back and forth, the everything. You know, the home run, he said he thought that game was slipping on the Harper home run. But remember, the Mets retook the lead, and then the Phillies took a 2-run lead, and then you could really make the conversation that game's biggest decision goes, why Strahm in that moment? Estevez, Hoffman, Strahm, that's the decision, and they end up going with Strahm. I don't know if there were splits or what. I mean, Lindor's a switch, but you had no lefty in the lineup at that spot. I thought that was a pretty shocking decision to go with Strahm in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know from just a tactical standpoint, the way that this gets done, I mean, it's talked about ahead of time. If we get into the late innings, we like this guy on this hitter, this matchup, and that's the way it's done, Mike. I mean, that's the way that they do it. It's all mapped out in advance. And look, Matt Strahm, he ain't given up runs in back-to-back games this season. It's the first time it happened all year was this past weekend. So you got to trust these guys, and you got to hope that he's able to turn it around here this week.
Well, we'll talk to Doug Glanville on the other side. He'll have the call tomorrow, Wednesday, and if there is a game on Friday, right here on 97.3 ESPN. Former Philly Doug Glanville joins us on the other side. We'll get his perspective. You're calling a game like that. The back and forth of being a part of a broadcast like that. What was his key takeaway of what these two teams are now dealing with heading into game number 3 tomorrow? You'll hear from former Philly center fielder Doug Glanville coming up next. John McMullen will talk a little Eagles. There was some football yesterday, and there was a lot connected to the Eagles. 3:30.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Hour 2 of the Sports Bash live from the Fanatics Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Booking Games at Ocean Casino in Atlantic City. This hour is brought to you by Broadleaf's Plumbing, Heating and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing service, and installation for generations. Call them 609-390-3907, online at broadleafs.net. Mike Gill, Bob Wankel's with me for the entire show today. We've been talking a lot of Phillies. We'll get into some Eagles a little bit later, but right now, Doug Glanville, former Philly, and now a part of the ESPN radio broadcast, which you heard Saturday and Sunday right here on 97.3 ESPN. And you'll hear him tomorrow, Wednesday, and hopefully not Friday. But if there is a Friday game, Doug Glanville will be on the call with Boog Sciambi, and you heard it right here on 97.3 ESPN. Well, we saw Doug when we were in London. These two teams played, Doug, and here they are again. Oh, how different they are from the London matchups, but holy mackerel, what a game you were treated to yesterday. It had just about everything that you could ask for in a playoff matchup in Philadelphia.
Yeah, man, what a great game. And it was just an honor to be on the call because you just sit there and sometimes you just want to step back and just watch as a fan and enjoy it. I mean, I've known these teams my whole life as whatever player, fan, growing up in New Jersey, going to college in Philadelphia. And those two teams have just been interconnected in my life. So just had, like you said, everything, man, just, some great moments. And I expected nothing less because of the rivalry. You just have this long history that's never existed in the playoffs. And that's what's so head-scratching. Like, wow, these two teams never gone up against each other. That's really something. And the fan bases deserve this sort of pound-for-pound, punch-for-punch, and that's what we're getting.
Doug, a question for you about momentum and belief in a clubhouse. And as a former player, I'm kind of interested if you could speak to this. The Mets have had so many miraculous moments over the past, the past couple months, but even just the past few days. Does that kind of become contagious in a clubhouse where it's like, hey, you know what? We are going to do it. It doesn't matter what it looks like situationally. We are going to find a way. I mean, how do you explain I don't want to take anything away from them from a baseball perspective, but it just feels like they have this magic about them right now up until, the ninth inning yesterday.
Well, I mean, look, belief is a big part of anything, let alone just playing at baseball where you have a team that's talented, and guess what? The team in the other dugout is really talented too. It's micro hairs that separate these teams, and that there's a lot of things that are out of your control. A bad bounce, hits the wall, hits the top of the wall, whatever it may be. So you try to hone in on something that's intangible, and a lot of it comes down to that team, that clubhouse. I know the Mets all season long has talked about being resilient. I've seen them at different stages early in the season. I saw them in London, saw them at the end of the year at September against the Brewers, and you just watch this team build and gain that confidence. And certainly with the success of coming back, and I think Lindor is a big part of it, right? The table setter that just has that clarity about the greatness and the possibility. Lindor sets that tone, and when they moved him to that leadoff spot sometime in May, that changed everything. And I think one of the things he said to Carlos Mendoza is like, okay, I'll do this. I'll go to the leadoff slot, but it can't be just like 2 days and then you bring me back. You gotta let me ride this out and see what happens. And that turned out to be an incredibly wise move. And when you have moments of changing small things and then big things happen, and you watch how the Mets have had these big innings collectively, one after the other, you see that you start to think, well, we're never out of it. We're just never out of it. And the Phillies have that same story in many ways, of just how much they grind out and really work through things like Bryce Harper. And you could circle a lot of players on both sides of the field to say they have that extra something, and it's starting to become a cultural phenomenon with each team.
Doug Glanville, ESPN Radio's broadcast of the Phillies and the Mets. You can hear it right here on 97.3 ESPN. So Saturday, Doug, Wheeler's throwing a gem. He leaves the game with a lead. Obviously, they cannot hold the lead. The offense is ice cold. Yesterday, through half the game, the offense bringing nothing to the table. What finally kind of got this offense going? How were they able to finally get some runs across the board and carry some momentum to get them to the ninth inning in position to win?
It's a weird response, but part of it is their pitching, right? The fact is, if your pitching wasn't as good to match Wheeler inning by inning by inning, you'd look up, it'd be 7-0. But it wasn't. It was the fact that outside of the Schwarber home run in the beginning, there was zeros slapped up by the Mets. And I think as they kept going, they said, wait a minute, now we're just one swing away. We're just one swing, one bloop, broken bat. And you start to say, well, we're in this game. And what a steal that is to take one of the best pitchers in baseball and have him start a game and you come out with the W, even if it wasn't on his back. And so slowly they started to believe. And look, these teams played against each other so much in recent times. There's a familiarity. And what does that do for a hitter? Well, you feel pretty good. I know what this guy has. I don't care that he has a 1.2 ERA. I've faced him enough time to be able to make adjustments. And so the mystique of what is a great Philly bullpen isn't really there for the Mets, just like Edwin Diaz is probably not much of a surprise to the Phillies. So you kind of lose that pitcher advantage, so to speak, the matchup advantage that you look for, which is based on scarcity, right? That's how you're successful. Like, all right, I've never seen this guy. Oh, he has a forkball that's knuckles and it's twists in the wind and it drops off the table. If you've never seen it before, no shot. But when you've seen it a couple times, you know what it does. And so it's created this interesting equalizer effect between these two teams, where the Mets have shown over and over again that they can get to these great bullpens. But it's no secret that they've gotten to these bullpens later in the year. Remember, they played the Brewers at the end of the season, and they said, okay, now we know what these guys have. And they played the Braves all year and got to Iglesias, which nobody got to. They got to Aspie and Payamps. They got to Devin Williams. They got to Strom. They got to Hoffman. They've gotten to all the – so, yeah, I mean, look, credit to those hitters and their approach, but also the fact that, postseason baseball, to do it at that stage at this moment, really says something about their resilience.
Doug, on the flip side, you got Philadelphia. The Harper at bat, the Castellanos at bats, the Stott triple. Is there an at-bat in that game for them that kind of got their offense going?
Well, I mean, Trey Turner. Trey Turner saw 5 sweepers when Severino was just on a roll. And you sense that if he threw the sweeper exactly in the same spot, he might have had Trey Turner again. But he hung it a little bit, and Trey Turner stayed back and was able to get on base. And then sort of things started to roll. I mean, Harper, big hit, that's a game changer. It just does something with the crowd. Just boom, everything changes. Even though they were still kind of coming back, that was a huge hit. And then Castellanos, who was, getting eaten alive earlier in the game, made adjustments in-game. And when you have guys that can make in-game, in-at-bat adjustments, that goes a long ways, especially when a guy like Severino, who makes a lot of adjustments himself. Severino will pitch and then change things up. Okay, I'm going to start throwing my curveball now. I'm going to start, he's very in tune with what hitters are starting to time up on him. And so the Phillies got that going, and most importantly, from the bullpen standpoint, Diaz came in the 7th inning, and they were able to get to him. And these are all confidence boosts because they say, well, you could bring in your closer. Inevitably, really, nobody's going a complete game, right? I mean, that's just not what's happening. So you're going to have to beat a bullpen. And when you've done that, just like the Phillies, and it's gone both ways, now you feel like you're on par with each other. And that's kind of fun because you get back to 0. And so it's no secret why this is a 1-1 series, and wouldn't be shocked if it goes 5.
Looking ahead to Game 3, you get Sean Manaea going for the Mets, and he's sort of reinvented himself a little bit this season. He's just a totally different pitcher and certainly much more effective. Can you talk a little bit about some of the adjustments he's made and why he's having this level of success, and maybe how the Phillies might be able to combat that a little bit in Game 3?
So Manaea he's really made adjustments. First of all, in the off season, he really, went to drive line, worked on his stuff, right? He tried to perfect. A lot of players these days go to centers and train under like the new technology, and they learn and really get a sense of self about how their pitching was last year, where they're at, and how they can get better. So I know Severino and Jose Iglesias, a lot of their players made that commitment. But I think the other thing, one thing that does is it gives him velocity. He was throwing 91 miles an hour, and now he was getting to 94. And the next thing he was able to do is he watched Chris Sale and that arm angle, and sometime in July he's like, you know what, let me try that. So it seems to be working for Chris Sale. So he went and dropped down a few degrees, and that gave him a really different look, and he's been great since that point, really. I mean, he had a phenomenal September, and that was a big thing. And one of the big things he did, I talked to him just a couple of days ago, pregame, and I asked him, I said, well, we're seeing that you used to get kind of run out of the stadium, but you kind of figured it out in your last start. What did you do differently? And he said, well, I held the ball, I quick pitched, I hold my leg up, and I just mixed it up. So I asked him if he does that, like, premeditated. Does he do it in advance? And he said, no, I just change it up and keep them guessing. And it worked really well because that was a big weakness for the Mets in the beginning of the year. They were getting absolutely run out of the stadium, and they found a way to be better. And they did. They did it. They moved up quite a few slots in caught stealing percentage, partly getting Torrens, all these things. So there's no doubt that Manaea is an example of that, of putting it all together, making in-season adjustments. And as I described the Mets starting rotation, it's old dogs learning new tricks. Severino didn't even have a sweeper or a sinker last year. That's one of the best sweepers in the game now. Sinker, fantastic, gives them a contact pitch. Guys like Quintana, guys like Manaea dropping down. I mean, Peterson, they've all kind of reinvented themselves, and they've done it in kind of, different later parts in their career. They're not rookies. So that's something to be said for how quickly how adaptable the Mets team has been. And no doubt the Phillies have done a lot of that themselves.
The Phillies made an interesting decision yesterday to bench Alec Bohm. I guess we can call it a benching, and he is, by all indications, going to play in Game 3. I guess a few different things. Number one, were you surprised that they went that route this early in the series? Guy had 44 doubles this year, and he has been struggling, certainly. He was 2 for his last 27 prior to yesterday. What do you think went into that decision? And then I guess the other part of it is, if you're a manager, how do you sort of walk the line between asking for urgency out of your club, but also not losing that player moving forward? I mean, you're going right back to him tomorrow. Is there any risk that you run in losing him, and further diminishing his confidence in the middle of a pretty rough stretch?
Well, I didn't call it a benching. I called it like a timeout. It's like, putting my, 5-year-old, they kind of, because they didn't really, he came in the game like 4 innings in. It was like, okay, you're free now.
Right.
No, I mean, we talked to manager Rob Thompson about it, and he said, look, trying to get him on track, of course, and you never know, does this backfire, but that's where you have to trust yourself as a manager to say, look, I'm communicating, I'm transparent. We have to win. We have to do everything we can. And right now, you're not the best option. And maybe some of that is a little bit of like how he viewed him responding to things versus like, okay, the stats. But those things coming together have just, Bohm has been frustrated, and because he wants to do well, and he's had a great year. He was an all-star, RBIs, 97 ribbies, all these things he's done. And, so he wanted, and he mentioned that Sosa coming in. Sosa's like an energy guy. He's the guy you kind of put, he's like Iglesias. He comes in and he brings a lot of energy and passion, and they wanted to just give that a shot. So, that's what you do. And sure, any player could be affected a lot of ways from those things. But in the postseason, this is sort of what kind of exposes you for better or for worse. And, if Bohm's like, I quit on the team, I'm going to pout the rest of it and I'm done, that's still going to be more of a reflection on him. Now, if he comes together, shines, does what he has to do, and, I saw him out there hitting early again in his ski cap and taking ground balls at third base, putting in the work, that was positive. He didn't go and say, well, I'm not doing that. He came out early and got some work in. So there's teams that have guys that if he's playing well, you're just a better team. They're better with Alec Bohm playing Alec Bohm baseball like he did across the season. Just like the Mets are better with J.D. Martinez in the lineup when J.D. Martinez is at his best. And that's why he's gonna make the roster even when he was 6 for 55 in September. Like they need these guys, and they have to do whatever it takes to get them going, including shock them, bench them, and do whatever it takes to get them on the right track. And, the managers need to be in tune with their players to know what works.
Doug Glanville, ESPN Radio's coverage of the Phillies and the Mets continues tomorrow. Tomorrow, Doug, you just watched Bryson Stott hit that triple. Huge moment in the game. He has struggled against lefties. Do you move Sosa to second, or do you anticipate Stott is back in the lineup tomorrow?
That's a good question. And, there's a lot of ways you could look at it. Sometimes it's not just lefties across the board or righties. It's the kind of righty, kind of lefty. They have the certain kinds of stuff that they say, okay, Manaea actually is harder. He's tougher on righties. I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me. I believe it was 190 that righties hit off of him this season. Lefties did a little better. So it might be a scenario where, you watch a guy like Bryce Terang, who was at the Brewers. That's kind of a Bryson Stott kind of match, a guy who can, make contact, slap the ball around, and run. So if there's a lefty that he might get a start against, it probably would be a Manaea. And because Stott gives you some D, you can really run. And some of it is also matchups later and like who do you want to come off the bench against who. If you're thinking about looking at the Mets bullpen, that's also going to be a factor. So that's the good news is they have pretty good options. I mean, Sosa, look, he's such a key X factor for the Phillies because he's got a lot of power. You watch him take batting practice, man, this guy, center field, right center field. I feel like if Sosa got a chance to get 425 at bats in a year, and he continues to work on things, he might get his strikeouts. He's going to swing, but he's going to hit 25 home runs. So they have that's a nice that's a nice player to have on your bench and be able to flex his way in.
Doug, you played center field. The Phillies have a center fielder who is excellent defensively. Would you stick with Rojas in the lineup, or do you look for more offense as this season goes on, or do you like having that security blanket in center field with Johan Rojas? If you're Rob Thompson, are you sticking with Rojas, or are you going with more offense?
Well, they've stuck with him. I looked at it last year when they played the D-backs, and you know what you're getting. And look, Rojas, it's not like he's hitting like 105. You know, he hit 240 or so during the season. He's not going to hit for a lot of power, but he is a really good base stealer, and he gives you defense. And I think, you know, the matchup will dictate if you want to start off defensive-minded and know that you could bring in someone later if you have a certain, depending on how the game goes. You could move Marsh over, you know, who I don't think is as strong in center as Rojas is, but Marsh is a really good left fielder. So you do have those options, but it's like a matchup thing, lefty and righty. But you know what you're getting, and if Rojas gets, you know, a couple hits, that's definitely a bonus. But you know, you think of it this way: you have Real Muto behind the plate, and that's a catcher that's an offensive force in many ways. Right? He can run, he gives you a lot. There's a lot of teams that have catchers that hit like 180, 170, you know, there's a good amount of catchers out there, but they liked what they do in managing the game. And there might be a situation where you say, okay, I got a pinch hit for this guy, and bring someone else in. Rojas is kind of in that boat. And if their offense is like clicking like it did game 2, you feel a lot better about having a more defensive-minded center fielder.
All right, the last one we got for you, Doug, is Nick Castellanos, who has last year in the division series against the Braves, he carried the Phillies in that series, and then he went ice cold in the series against Arizona. But have you seen the change of approach from Castellanos to think that streaky version of Nick Castellanos is behind him?
Absolutely not. Nick Castellanos is that's what Philly loves about Nick Castellanos. He's Nick Castellanos always. That's unapologetically Nick Castellanos. That's who he is. He's swinging at the first pitch. He's looking to swing. He's streaky. And because the beauty of his streakiness is when he's streaky hot, he is absolutely one of the more dangerous players in the game. I mean, I say that because of evidence, right? I was working in Chicago when they traded for him, and his numbers he had Mike Trout numbers after that trade. Like, he was that good, and that was Trout at his best. So that's a long stretch to be like Mike Trout. If you're Mike Trout for like a couple days, you're feeling pretty good. So we had like a second half like that. So yeah, he was a younger version of him, but but you saw what he did. Like they kept working their way around Harper to get to Castellanos, and he was like, wait a minute. You're slapping me in the face right now. So home run, base hit, you know, gets on. You know, he made his adjustments. But yeah, is he going to swing and chase? Absolutely. But that's the whole team. That's the Achilles heel of the Phillies. If they chase, get in trouble, that's where they can spiral. And it's sometimes a function of everybody kind of trying to do too much, right? You're expanding, especially when you have capable guys that know how to stay in the zone, like a Bryce Harper. But Nick is the X factor, and I do think there's a version of Nick as an X factor that's a champion. There's a version of him, and you know they just have to have everybody else support that. And you just know that there's games he won't be there offensively, and you hope that the rest of the team does their part.
All right, tomorrow, right here on 97.3 ESPN, you'll hear the coverage starting at 5 o'clock. Book Sciambi and our guest, Doug Glanville, will be on the call Tuesday, Wednesday, and if needed, on Friday. You can listen to all 3 games on 97.3 ESPN. Doug, always great to catch up with you, man.
All right. My pleasure. Great to be on. I'll catch you the rest of the postseason.
All right, that's Doug Glanville, everybody. So he's sticking with Rojas. He probably goes with Stott, it sounds like, but you don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, look, I mean, certainly there is an argument to be made to stick with Bryson Stott. You want to play your guys. You get to this point in the season, there is something to be said for playing the guys that got you there. And he's a big game player. He's had a lot of big moments. He's just had one. I just feel like they're going to go to Mundo Sosa. That's what I think they're going to do.
It was not addressed. By the way, some interesting news on the minor league level. Andrew Painter is going to pitch in the Arizona Fall League. So good news there. I bet you Painter if he was healthy this year, would he have been a factor in this team? Would he have been getting those number 5 spots?
Oh, yeah, I mean, for sure. For sure. They would have pushed him.
All right, man. Painter, by the way, Arizona Fall League, so he'll throw, and then I would imagine be a part of spring training next year and probably be a factor in the rotation. But this year, Game 3 tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN. We're going to get back to the Phillies in just a little bit. But what a weekend in the NFL. Games all over the place coming down. And then last night, Dallas, while you were sleeping, scored with 20 seconds left, but first place in the NFC East. Can anybody catch the Commanders? We'll get into that. Plus, the Eagles play the Browns this weekend. Our first look at the Eagles-Browns Week 6. John McMullen on the other side with the storylines as the Eagles come out of the bye week. That's next. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to the Sports.
Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice.
With Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
We're live at the Fanatic Sportsbook here at the Gallery Bar Booking Games, Ocean Casino Resort, Atlantic City. This hour is brought to you by Broadleaf's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating and plumbing service installation for generations. 609-390-3907, online broadleafs.net. So I'm in Delaware this weekend. Go up on the boardwalk. The beach is packed. I mean, packed with people. As if it was an August weekend. Packed. I don't know to go air. I mean, it was roasted down there.
We're getting the drop in the temperatures this week, right?
I don't know.
So if you're like a beach nut, that might have been your last shot.
I mean, it's like warm here, but I've never seen the beach. Like, I've gone to the beach in September, October. There's like 8 people.
Yeah.
There had to be 800 people on the beach. It was mobbed.
No, I'm all done with the beach after August. It's pumpkin patch time, Mike. Get your flannels on. Go take some pictures with the wife.
If you were flannels yesterday, you were sweating your face off.
Yeah, no flannels yesterday.
All right, baseball took center stage yesterday, but there was a lot of football, and the Eagles are getting back into the swing of things. They're going to play Cleveland on Sunday. We'll have that game, of course, on 97.3 ESPN. Let's get into a little bit of the Eagles in the weekend that was in the NFC East. John McMullen from Birds 365 and Sports Illustrated is here. And McMullen, of course, is brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. Shop their lineup of new, pre-owned, and certified pre-owned Hondas online, boardwalkhonda.com. Johnny Mac, did you stay up late for the Dak Prescott comeback last night?
Yeah, that lightning delay hit me hard, man. It compounded by the London game early. I had to tap out. Too much.
9:30 a.m. till what? About 1 o'clock in the morning last night. But,
yeah.
Hey, Dallas gets it done. So that kind of, I don't want to say saves their season, but keeps them relevant, keeps them in the mix. But I guess you got to look over to the Eagles' opponent this week, Cleveland, and the ineptitude they showed against Washington, and kind of ask yourselves, is this Washington team legit for real? Or is this opponent this week that Philadelphia will play that bad?
Well, yeah, I think the Eagles are in good shape for the next 7 days. That's what I wrote at Sports Illustrated. The next 7 years, I think they might have some problems with Jaden Daniels. I mean, that guy is tough to deal with. And, you know, I go back to RG3 in his rookie season. For those who forget it, how spectacular it was. And, he got hurt in the playoffs, and that was it. Now, you hope nobody gets hurt, and you don't know how that playing style sustains long term, but man, he's dynamic. And the Washington Commanders have been a laughingstock for so long. You know, they got a new owner. Sixers fans are well aware. GM who's evidently pilfering Howie Roseman. A head coach who's very good, very smart, very well liked. And now you got a quarterback who looks dynamic. I think that team's gonna be a problem for a long time if Jaden Daniels stays healthy.
All right, John, you got to help me out here. I'm having a hard time figuring out how I should feel about the Eagles. There's the part of me that says they've been in Brazil, Tampa, New Orleans. They played 4 pretty good teams. 2-2 isn't that bad at the bye, especially with all the injuries they've had on the offensive side of the ball. And there's another part of me that says this team's loaded with drama, feels a lot like last year. Everything looks tough offensively. They need to sustain long drives. Defensively, there appears to be a ton of holes, no pass rush. Kind of like the whole glass half full, glass half empty thing here. You look at the schedule coming up. You said it. They should be in good shape for the next 7 days. Has there been more good than bad here, more positives than negatives, or is the jury just totally out on this team right now?
I think it's out, but, I'm a little bit more confident, believe it or not, than I was when the season started. I had them starting 2-2, so I'd like to take credit for that, but I had them losing to Green Bay and New Orleans. So, it went the exact opposite way, but they start 2-2. So I have no problem with that part of it. But if you think about playing with A.J. Brown for three of those 4 games, and then obviously Tampa, you add Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson to it, I'm not even worried about the offense, not even one iota. A little bit with the quarterback and, not turning over the football. But for the most part, when they get back, and A.J. will be back, and Devontae will be back, and Lane will be back for Cleveland, they're going to be fine. It's just a matter of how good. And from the perspective of nitpicking, we're all going to do that from week to week. 4th down this, 4th down that, drop past this, drop past that, but they're going to be very good. Defensively, yeah, it doesn't look great. And there's no pass rush, as you mentioned. They don't tackle. The coverage is soft. There's not much else to defense at the end of the day. So they got to figure some things out defensively. But I do have a lot of confidence in Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator, so I think there's some upside there. And then you look at the whole, if you want to look at the entire picture. As far as the NFC East, I think Dallas has come back. They're not nearly as good as they've had been, but Washington has taken a step forward. The Giants, I don't think, are going to be relevant, all due respect to the upset. That was a great win for them. They're just not a good football team. And then the NFC as a whole, are the Eagles going to be battling for one of those last playoff teams, or are they going to be a significant contender in the NFC? Right now, they don't look like a significant contender in the NFC, but they look like a potential playoff team.
Well, a lot of teams, John, you look at. San Francisco loses yesterday to Arizona. I don't know that anybody figures that. Is San Francisco not in that upper echelon anymore? Is Minnesota really? Are we believing that they're in the upper echelon? Is why, we say it every year, someone goes from worst to first. Right now it looks like Washington could be that worst to first type of team. Minnesota was one of the worst teams, last year. They're undefeated still. Are we getting comfortable that the NFC is starting to see a little changeover?
Yeah, and I'd add Detroit into that mix as well. I didn't expect the NFC North to be as good as it is, but I think it is good. You mentioned it starts with Minnesota at 5-0, but, they have a great defense. I think Brian Flores does things that are innovative that not a lot of other people do. And you mentioned last year they weren't very good, but they lost their quarterback. Remember, they would have been a playoff team last year. I think people forget that. And they were en route to winning that division when Kirk Cousins went down. So they're not a bad team. It's a matter of, is Sam Darnold going to hold up long term? We'll see if he can. We'll see if he can't. But I think that's a talented team. If you look at, their skill position, we always talk about the skill position players on the Eagles. They got good skill position players, and they don't even have T.J. Hockenson yet. He's coming back after their bye, which is this week. Then you add him to that mix. I think that's gonna be a good team. I think Washington's gonna be a good team. I think Green Bay's gonna be a good team, and the Eagles were able to get it done against them. And I think Detroit is gonna be a really good team. So there's a lot of teams that could take the next step in the NFC, and right now I'm not feeling the Eagles in as a potential team to take that next step.
I want to talk a little bit about the defense. You mentioned it. They've struggled to tackle consistently, really outside of the New Orleans game. And they don't get to the passer. Is this something that can be fixed in season, or is this just a matter of simply not having nearly good enough personnel? Is there a way to get more out of your edge rushers? Do you have to chase losses and, go out and try to make a trade before the deadline and add something else to this group? Or can you kind of point to maybe Fangio in Miami last year, where they gave up 109 points over the first 4 games of the season, and then by the middle of the year they started to play a little bit better? Is it an adjustment phase that you kind of hang your hat on, or are they just in deep, deep trouble here from here on out?
Well, I think you see the upside. I mean, they were great in New Orleans, so I do think there's room for growth. A lot of it is dependent on getting Jalen Carter going from a consistency standpoint. I mean, he's the one player on the Eagles defense that you can say, all right, he's one of the best in the entire NFL if he brings it each and every week and starts to show that consistency. And we'll see if they're able to tap into it. As far as the edge rushers, I mean, I think at times Josh Sweat has played well. The results aren't there. And coaches will tell you sacks come in bunches. Brandon Graham's played very well. Mm-hmm. And then it's all about Bryce Huff. And I do think, Vic has to sort of shift gears with Bryce Huff. I mean, part of it is with the Eagles' evaluation, the fact that he was a very good pass rusher with the Jets and wanted to turn him into a 3-down player. All right, pull the plug on that. So what? He's not a 3-down player. Use Brandon Graham and run support. That can be his role. And put him wide 9 in obvious pass situations and see if he can get to the quarterback. I haven't seen the Eagles make that move. I think they should make the move. I think it's obvious. And I think it's so obvious you might see it post-bye. And if not, he's probably going to continue to struggle. And I think that's sort of a failure of the coaching staff by not utilizing the strengths of the player, trying to minimize as many deficiencies as possible.
John, we have a lot of week here to look at this matchup, but first impressions of the opponent. Obviously, that game was the one that was on in the market here yesterday against Washington. Deshaun Watson has just been a total bust for this team. I mean, this team went to the playoffs last year with a ton of injuries. They're healthy, and yet they look like a complete disaster, or they're healthier, I should say. What is your early impression of where this Cleveland team is going into Week 6?
I mean, that pretty much sums it up, and it starts with the quarterback. I mean, they were better. They made the playoffs and were better offensively with Joe Flacco as a quarterback, who is more of a natural fit to Kevin Stefanski. He's one of those Shanahan-like play action, wants to, run those long developing routes, wants to do a lot of waggle stuff. So he's in that family of coaches, and they don't have that type of quarterback. And then even if they did, Deshaun's, he missed the entire 2021 season as he was dealing with all the sexual conduct allegations. But I think people forget he was not suspended. He was just put in limbo. Nobody knew what to do about it. So he's just inactive every week in Houston. And then 2022 rolls around and they suspend him. He settles as many cases as he can. The league suspends him for 11 games. So he basically almost lost 2 years of football. And look, we saw it with Le'Veon Bell back in the day for different reasons, taking a year off, saying, not in trouble. I don't want to make that comparison. So Deshaun shooting himself in the foot. And now we're seeing with Hassan Reddick, when you take that kind of layoff in pro football, it just doesn't work. And he's not the same guy. And they paid him all this money, and I'm sure if they didn't, Kevin Stefanski would have benched him long ago. Mm-hmm. He can't. And they're forced to play him. And it's, I think it was Orlovsky who called it the worst situation in professional sports. I can't disagree with him. They don't want to play him. They have to play him. He's adding nothing to the equation. And we'll see. Poor Andrew Berry, he was here under Howie Roseman, obviously, for a year, went back to Cleveland. It's a bad situation. Plus, Nick Chubb is on his way back. We'll see. I don't know if he'll get back this week. They also have had a ton of injuries on their offensive line. Typically, their offensive line is like top 5 in the NFL. Wills was hurt for a while. Jack Conklin still out. Wyatt Teller's on injured reserve, one of the best guards in football. So there's some injury issues as well. But, yeah, it definitely starts with the quarterback, and the quarterback is a mess right now.
John McMullen, of course, Eagles-Browns this weekend. 1 o'clock kick on 97.3 ESPN. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick have the call. We'll have it for you here. And, of course, we'll be taking a look closer at that game all week long here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Check out John tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. on Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. And, of course, over at Sports Illustrated at JF McMullen on the X platform. All right, John, we will catch up with you tomorrow, man.
Yeah, and don't forget Jim Schwartz will be back, so we'll talk about that this week.
Yeah, Schwartz is back. You got Sirianni talking Wednesday, so we're getting cranked back up. It was a perfect week for the bye with the Eagles taking a little sidestep. The Phillies jumped right in there and gave us plenty, and now the Eagles will be back. Although the Eagles are probably thanking the Phillies for winning that game yesterday. Because if they would be down 2-0.
I wouldn't set foot in the city if the Phillies lost, too. So that would have been.
Did you see the video? Did you see the video of the fans yelling at Sirianni to take the points yesterday at the Phillies game?
I didn't. Somebody told me about it. Jeff Kerr told me about it. I'm like, Nick should have not showed up at that game. I'm like, come on, Nick. No, you got to understand where you are right now.
All right, man. We'll talk to you.
All right, see you guys.
Yeah. Did you see that? Sirianni?
No.
Sirianni's sitting in like a box or something.
He was at game 1 with Fletcher Cox, Big Dom.
Yeah, and he's like in the overhang.
That's what we need. We need more Big Dom.
And all the fans are pointing up to him saying, you're ruined both offenses now. The Eagles, and that's when the Phillies couldn't get it.
Well, I heard the people shouting at him saying, Nick, take the points. Come on, man. The guy is just trying to enjoy a little baseball on a Saturday.
Better beat the Browns this week. 9-point favorite. You better win this game.
Is that the biggest number of the weekend?
I believe it is. It's one of the biggest of the season so far.
Football at 4. Mosher's here. When we come back, some more NFL thoughts from yesterday. Cowboys win last night. Washington. John says he's buying the Commanders. The NFC is very interesting. What's up is down. It's a crazy first 5 weeks of the NFC season. We got that, more Phillies, all here live at the Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar, booking games on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform and YouTube. At Mike Gill Show, use the hashtag SBLive.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
On live at the Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar, booking games. Ocean Casino Resort, Atlantic City. Mike Gill, Bob Wankel's hanging out, talking a little Phils, little Eagles with the bye week. Eagles back next week, of course, or this weekend, I should say, against the Cleveland Browns. Great football weekend. That Ravens-Bengals game was epic yesterday. Back and forth they went.
It's going to be a lot of fun this weekend. You got the Ravens and Commanders.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, Beltway?
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
So, Saturday you said you were watching the game, Phillies game, a little preoccupied?
A little preoccupied with the children.
Sunday, too?
So you got the intensity of the playoff game. You got a kid that wants food every 30 seconds. Then you have a daughter that wants everything every 30 seconds. It was a lot of stress.
Sunday, too?
A lot of stress. Yeah, back to back.
Wow.
Yeah. Big family man these days.
On the porch, they're sitting with you?
Yeah, I was out on the deck, and then we brought it inside, try to like switch things up a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you're not just like sitting there by yourself screaming at the TV like a lunatic.
Well, last week, so we asked the listeners, a place to go to watch the game that has the sound on.
Yeah.
Got to have the sound on.
Oh,
right?
The sound was on yesterday.
Yeah,
There's just a lot of sounds that went with it.
So I took off. I took the ferry down to Delaware, went to Delaware, and watched the game down there. Wanted to get a little different feel from different places. You got a lot of Phillies fans down there. Place was jumping. Place was epic. I will say they did have the sound on. The problem was, this is the problem a lot of the establishments have. They're not really used to putting the sound on all the time.
Yeah.
And when they put the sound on, it's just not loud enough. There were so many people in there, you really just couldn't hear it. So I will say...
Are you a big go-out-for-the-game guy in general?
No.
Or do you like to be on the couch in a specific spot with your beverages? And
football, I do not go out for the game at all. I am not a go-out for the Eagles game. Sunday afternoon, I'm not a big, and no libations on a Sunday.
Okay. Keep it clean on a Sunday.
Generally, yeah.
Okay.
I do not like to go out to watch football. Baseball, I can handle like a Saturday, because they play Sunday too.
Yeah, I mean, middle of July. I mean, go out for a game. Yeah, how about these?
I'm talking about playoff games.
Okay,
though. Yeah.
But you're in. You'll go out for
on a Saturday. If the game's a Friday or Saturday night.
How
yes.
about on a Tuesday at 5?
No. During the week, no imbibes.
Okay.
Nothing.
That's good, man.
Just a Friday, Saturday kind of guy.
You're a better man than me.
Yeah, well,
you get to the end of the day sometimes.
Hey, look, this is a tough job.
You're grinding out here.
Aren't you grinding?
I'm tired. I made sure I had a little
4 hours.
I had a second coffee on the way down here.
People don't realize, you got to be high energy for 4 hours. And you got a lot of gotcha people out there. They're just waiting for you to say something.
Yeah.
And you can't be coming in a little foggy in the brain.
No. Got to make sure you have your takes right.
You got the gotcha people just waiting, man. They're waiting. No, but a Friday night, Saturday night, 4 o'clock Friday is an awful time. I can't imagine the establishments. Although Friday happy hours, maybe. I don't know. What do you think? 4 o'clock on a Friday is game 5. You got all the marbles, game 5, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Come on, baseball.
This city people will figure it out. Take some PTO. You'll be all right. You figure it out.
All right. When we come back, it's football at 4. Jeff Mosher. Mosher's a big baseball fan.
I know. Yeah.
Talk to him. Little Eagles, getting ready for that. Also, little Sixers tonight.
Jersey 97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
Just hungry to bring back another Lombardi to Philly. The fans deserve it. Our team deserves it. Culture begs for it.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is here. A bye week for the Eagles, but a lot of things to take away. Dallas win last night, a giant win yesterday, and a Washington win. The division goes 3-0, and of course the Eagles getting ready for the Browns. Mike Gill, Bob Wankel on a Monday is with me here. He's Jeff Mosher on a Mosher Monday here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. There he is, Jeff Mosher. What's up, buddy?
What's up, fellas? How you guys doing?
It's hard to kind of. It's so good that the Eagles did not play yesterday. That Phillies game was just such a unbelievable roller coaster of emotions. But there was a lot of takeaways. We're watching, inside here all day. We've been seeing highlights of stuff, and you're seeing the Dallas win last night, the way the Washington Commanders continue to play, the Giants get a win. It felt like a good kind of week off for Philadelphia. Normally you don't like that early bye week, but do you think that it was exactly what they needed, Moshe?
You know what? It probably is. I mean, it's easy to say in retrospect, but I think they needed the time for self-scouting more than anything and figure out a couple of things that they need to do better, which, Adam and I talked about on the Inside the Birds podcast that dropped this morning. We talked to a lot of people. We kind of feel what the Eagles can do differently, which aren't major things, but just some tweaks. And usually those are the kind of tweaks that you kind of think and brainstorm about during the bye week when you do your self-scouting process. So I do think it comes at a good time, especially knowing that the next 4 to 5 games on the schedule aren't the roughest games. They're not cakewalks by any stretch of the means, but they're not the toughest games. And then if you can make some of these tweaks and get yourself righted, then you feel like the bye week came at a good time for you to address what you need to address before you started, sinking even more.
I want to get your take. McMullen was on last hour. We brought up something, Washington's winning, Minnesota's winning, San Francisco's losing. The NFC seems like it's kind of taken a little bit of a different feel than it had at the beginning of the season. Do you feel that way, or do you think eventually, it will change back? Or do you think that Washington, Minnesota, those teams in the South, no, there is a couple teams that we didn't think of that this NFC has a different feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think some things will settle out. I don't think the Minnesota Vikings are going to be an undefeated team, right? And I don't think the Washington Commanders are going to play the Vikings in the NFC Championship game, although it looks like it would be headed that way now. But one thing Adam and I talked about with Greg Cosell when we did our NFC East preview in July, we did 4 different podcasts, each previewed each team, is that we noted some of the major strengths of each team that we thought would help them be better, and that has manifested so far. For example, the Giants traded for Brian Burns. They already had Dexter Lawrence. Kayvon Thibodeau is coming off, a good second year where he had double-digit sacks. I mean, we felt that they had a good pass rush, and it just needed some time to come together under their new coordinator. And if you look, they've done a really good job of getting at quarterbacks over the last few weeks and playing some good defensive ball after they weren't so good the first week or two. And even the offensive line improvements the Giants have given them the ability to at least function, right, as an offense compared to what you've seen the last 2 years. So now they're functional, and to go out into Seattle and win without Malik Neighbors, without Devin Singletary, and control at times the line of scrimmage the way they did shows you that they are an improved team. They're still not a good team, I don't think, but they already gave the Eagles fits last year, beat them last year, and the same thing with Washington. They made some really subtle, aside from the rookie quarterback, of course, but some subtle free agent off-season additions that gave them veteran leadership. Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, Bobby Wagner, Tyler Biadasz, Dorrance Armstrong. And you can see this team and see that they don't make a lot of stupid mistakes. They give themselves opportunities to win, and they're surrounding a young, promising quarterback with a nice shell of leadership and experience to allow him to succeed. So we said that we felt that the NFC East would not be the NFC least this year. We never said there was going to be a superpower division, and we don't think it is. But obviously these teams are formidable, and if you're not playing good ball, these teams can beat you.
Jeff, how important do you think it is for the Eagles to play a complete game on both sides of the ball on Sunday against a team right now that has just put absolute garbage on tape so far? I mean, my one thing that I keep coming back to is, I look at the schedule and I can talk myself into, okay, things lighten up a little bit. Maybe they win 3 of their next 4. They get to 5-3. They're set up to kind of contend, and we'll see how it goes. More than anything, though, I want to see this team just play a game where they win in convincing fashion, because I haven't seen it for almost 11 months now. Is it important at some point to just go out and dominate a team?
It is. I don't normally say that, Bob, but I think, this is something Mike and I talked about going into the bye week, is that with the schedule lining up and with the talent that the Eagles have, and you don't want you remember that win against the Giants they had last year? It was their only win in the last 6 games, but it felt like a loss because it was way too close. And
it almost ruined my Christmas, Jeff.
That's right, exactly. You didn't get good vibes about the team, and all the bad vibes that you had, even coming off a win, were correct. I mean, this Cleveland Browns team, now I'll throw an asterisk in here, Bob. I almost thought them getting killed was not a good sign or a good thing for the Eagles, because I just don't know how much longer that Kevin Stefanski can continue with Deshaun Watson when he has a guy like Jameis Winston there, who I think they're using in some weird short yardage situations. But the point is, they're already starting to stick him on the field a little bit. And, we'll see what happens this week. But if they go to Winston, I think it gives them a little bit of a reset and a refresh. And then who knows if Chubb is able to come back for them by this game or not. But, if you're an Eagles fan, you want Deshaun Watson to start that game, and yes, you absolutely feel like you're going to need to dominate it.
Well, I'll tell you what, Watson's been horrendous, and it just feels like the way the Eagles have been going is that their defense is the one that kind of gets him going and kind of, makes things look easy for him. But that being said, coming out of this break defensively, are there any anticipated changes that you think will happen coming out of this bye and going into Cleveland?
You heard Vic Fangio talk about Cooper DeJean closing in on the slot position, and certainly that is the biggest change where I think you can look at right away and say, do they make a change there? I don't know if it'll be 100%, Cooper's going to be your slot guy and Avonte Maddox is just now a reserve and maybe a 50-50 thing. We'll have to see. But, based on Vic Fangio saying that and what the tape shows on Avonte Maddox, it would be almost silly if Cooper was ready to play more snaps to at least not get him in there, get his athleticism going, see if he can make some plays both in the run and in the pass defense game. I think Sidney Brown is someone who can eventually help, but if he comes off of IR, which he's in, gets activated into the 21-day window, is what I should say, this week, which we anticipate that he will. He'll start practicing, but he's not going to go out there and play an entire game, and he may not play very much of it, but at least it's another reinforcement at a position where you've been struggling, and maybe you can get him in there and helping you, if not this week, but the week after and then the week after. As for the D-line or the linebacker crew, I think they're going to be patient here with Nakobe Dean and Zach Bond, but Oren Burks is a guy who played for the 49ers, good backup, good downhill linebacker, good tackler. At least he has been on tape recently. Maybe there's a reason Vic will note for trying to get him on the field more. And maybe you take Nakobe Dean off, especially in obvious run situations or first downs. That's a possible personnel change that we can look for. And at defensive end, as we said, you got what you got, or I should say edge rusher, outside linebacker. And I just think that they need to tighten up their coverage so that the D ends or the outside linebackers have a little bit more time to get to the passers.
All right, Jeff, let's look on the offensive side of things. Number one, do we anticipate that Brown, Smith, and Lane Johnson are ready to go for Cleveland?
We'll see. We won't know until they're out there tomorrow or Wednesday practicing, especially, concussions. There's a new protocol this year, and guys are taking a little bit longer to come back from. I still think that after 2 weeks, it will be a surprise a mild surprise if Devontae Smith isn't ready to get back to practice, but you never know. But I would imagine that we'll see all hands on deck unless, Devontae or an AJ just aren't recovering as well as you'd like.
Yeah, and I bring this up because I'm watching, obviously, this weekend, a lot of the action going on. And Dallas last night, now this is on the defensive side of the ball, but they're missing Micah Parsons, Lawrence, and yet it seemed that was the best defensive effort that they had all, season long there. Losing guys for some of these teams. Now, I get it, Smith and Brown are probably the two most indispensable players that this team has. But do you feel that just adding those two guys back is an automatic that this offense will just start to take off?
No, I think it should be better, but it's not automatic that they're going to light up the scoreboard. We'll just have to see. Certainly this offense was fairly healthy at the end of last year, and there were games where it didn't look good. And it's about the turnovers, right? I have no question that they'll be able to move the ball, but to me it's how's your third and fourth down conversion rate and how are your turnovers? And even with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, turnovers have been a big issue facing the team going back to the end of last year. So that'll be the one thing that you look at and say, it doesn't matter what your personnel is, can you protect the ball, especially against, teams that may not be that good defensively. Although the Browns should be good defensively, I think they're just suffering from a lack of offense.
Lack of offense from what has been just a disappointing. That whole Watson decision for them has just completely backfired on them. Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast and, of course, InsideTheBirds.com here on Football at 4. Obviously, with the bye week here, we get ready. I think Nick's going to talk on Wednesday and start to kind of go that, focus on this Browns team here. But, hey, we were laughing about this earlier. The Phillies winning that game yesterday. Boy, did the Eagles need that. The last thing they need is this Phillies team to go out early and then really ratchet up the pressure on them. Don't you agree that, like, if the Phillies would have lost yesterday, I mean, the pressure would have just doubled on this Eagles bunch?
Well, I got bad news for you, Mike. I mean, there's a possibility that the Phillies aren't playing baseball anymore by the time this game kicks off on Sunday. So.
Oh, my God, Bob, please.
We're not out of the woods yet here, man. Come on, we're not.
Well, oh, my God. You sound like me talking about the Eagles sometimes, man. Just keep it real right there.
Hey, Jeff, how are you feeling about it? I know you're a Phillies guy, so how are we feeling after 2?
Man, I'm trying not to look too far ahead. Like, I think now, in retrospect, it looks great to have Nola, right, be your number 3 instead of vice versa, with Sanchez going today. And Sanchez really got it together after a rough first. I feel like a couple of big hits that you saw from the Phillies might give them a nice little confidence boost going into New York. But there's something about this Mets team that annoyingly reminds me of the Phillies 2 years ago, and I can't get that out of my head. And I'm like, all right, if you take Game 3 and you're up 2-1, like, who are you going to Ranger in Game 4? Like, or do you try to?
He already announced.
Oh yeah, strap in, get ready.
He announced already that Suarez is pitching Game 4.
Oh man, that's almost as crazy as the Mets going with Senga in Game 1, but it worked for them. Man, my nerves are pretty shot, and I don't know if I can take 2 to 3 more games of this.
Wasn't at one point of your life, weren't you a Mets fan?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked. I really was. I was a diehard Mets fan. You know how you can tell a casual fan or a good fan from a diehard? The diehards are the ones that don't tell you about 86 Mets or, the 2008 Phils, right? The diehards are the ones that tell you about all the losses that crushed you. And I was, but it's weird. I was a baseball writer for 6 or 7 years of my life, covering the minor leagues first, before I was hired to cover the Phillies for Wilmington in 2015, right? And so when you become a baseball writer, as you guys know, first of all, some of your objectivity really increases. You lose the fanship. And then secondly, like, the Mets were never on. I was working. So I never got to watch them, and it really did just extinguish the flame within me. I am, like, bleeding with the Phillies for the last, I don't know, probably like 5 or 6 years ago.
It's funny you say that, because I was just telling Mike that, I was down there covering them, quite a bit between 2019 and really the start of this year, and then some things changed. And now the further I've gotten away from it, that fan kind of comes right back in you, Like, I really kind of got desensitized to the outcomes of these games, and now this year I'm getting a little goofy again. So
I suppose if I was back in the New York market around my family, around my roots, right, maybe I would tug the other way. But I've been in this market for almost 20 years. Like, I've watched the Phillies win a World Series, then go through a complete 4 to 5 years of their own process, which was awful, right? And I love baseball, so it was tough for me to have to watch that. And I wasn't going to be the guy who lived here, started a family here, raised my kids to root for a different team, and then bought the Major League Baseball package and watched the team I grew up. I was just going to, I just shed it, bought them, and it was easy because the Phillies were so bad after, the Hamels trade years, right, that I was able to at least suffer. Like, I suffered with that, so I watched the build-up. So the build-up part I've been a part of, so I've been sucked into all of it. So I'm a Phillies fan now. It's just the way it is.
Hey, it's admirable.
There are people in my family who give me a lot of but I don't care.
Hey, it's admirable. I say all the time, sports is about, being proud of your community. It's the fabric of your community. These people that come in and are like Cowboys fans, do you not like where you live? You didn't have to choose this zip code. You changed your team instead of changing your zip code, Moshe. So 2 points for you. All right, Moshe. Of course, we'll dive into this matchup with the Browns. It's a big start for this. The Eagles now. They got Cleveland, the Giants, Jacksonville, Cincinnati. They got a bunch of games here that they should start getting themselves right as this league is starting to get a little bit more tape on it. We're starting to get better feels about these teams, and we'll do it all week long here on Football at 4. All right, Moshe. Appreciate it, bud.
All right, fellas. Have a great rest of the day.
All right, Football at 4 brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. So we asked this question. What's your favorite moment of the Phillies win yesterday? Outside of the Castellanos game-winning hit.
I was going to say when it was over.
Of course, that's the answer. But was it the Harper homer, the Stott triple, or the Casty homer? Or is there something else that we left?
I think it's a Stott triple. I mean,
really?
Yeah, I think so. Because at that point, you're like, all right, they're going to do it. They're back. You know, they scaled the mountain. And then obviously things happen in the ninth. But, yeah, I think for me that was it. Because, you know what, like the Harper one is the one that gives you life. But you felt like even then, 3-2, it was like one run felt like it was going to be quite a task. And then, you know, obviously they get it on the very next at bat. To me, it was like the Stott one was where that, like, sigh of relief almost came in, albeit temporary.
Yeah. Well, the Stott one is the unexpected one, right? Because you got it from somebody that, like, your anticipation is.
Because he falls behind in the count, too, and he's got 2 strikes. And he said, oh, my God. Like, he just put the ball in play.
That umpire had a rough day at the office.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
No.
It wasn't great.
The umpiring in the series, by the way, has been rough.
Yeah.
The strikeout on Harper, I guess it was the first inning. I mean, that pitch is way up. You know, and it changes, it's just a shame because it does change the complexion of the game. If you get called out on that strike in the first inning, now your anticipation is he going to call that a strike on me again later in the game? And, you know, you're going to try to lay off a pitch up at the that ball is at the chin.
Oh, you know, Luis Severino's earned the right to get that pitch.
Now, you know, I think McGarry said it back in the first hour that it might have been Glanville, but Game 5, I'm imagining they don't go back to Senga.
No, I think right now the idea is it's probably Severino again, but it's all hands on deck, and we'll see. The Phillies are going to have the advantage, though, if they get to that game, independent of what the Mets do.
You were on with me Friday at 3. By that point, they had not announced Senga.
No.
So we did not talk about that. But when they announced Senga, were you shocked?
A little bit, because, look, I mean, you have to have some idea of what you're going to get, but they knew they weren't going to get a lot of length out of them. But the bullpen had been so banged up, like, and so overworked that just being able to buy 2 innings, buy one time through the order from a fresh arm was so important to that team in that spot. And you got to give him credit.
Oh,
He
listen,
delivered.
I love Senga, and the minute I saw him announced, I was like, oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I actually took the over 4 strikeouts. And he had 3 in 2 innings.
Yeah.
I mean, they pulled him at 31 pitches. I figured they would have. I was a little surprised they took him out there.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of volume and workload, and if you advance, or if in break glass, if in case of emergency in Game 5, like, you want to make sure that you have it.
Well, that's the question is now for them. Let's say you start Severino in that game. Is Senga an option at the back end? The way that Diaz is kind of, you know, maybe out of gas. Do you look at Senga as the guy who can close a game?
Well, if you just look by days rest, that you should be able to go to him. It's the whole year. But just off of his last appearance, they should be able to get something out of him if they need to. And look, they might. I mean, they really might. They are a little bit limited in their bullpen. Now, they have Stanek, who they weren't going to use yesterday, so they were a little bit short. Mendoza did not have all of the options at his disposal. They just said absolutely not to a couple of those guys out of the pen yesterday. That won't be the case this week, but who knows what it's going to look like by the time Game 5 rolls around, if it rolls around.
Yeah, if it rolls around, and obviously the way this thing is going, it feels like – I don't know, man. By the way, Matt Vierling hits second in the lineup for Detroit. I mean, it's unbelievable.
That's a trade they got wrong in hindsight.
If Vierling's on this team, what is he doing?
He's starting
playing
the outfield for them.
I mean, do they make the Hayes
tomorrow?
trade?
Probably. Yeah.
Do they make the Hayes trade?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
It's crazy to think. I mean, Vierling was just such an afterthought on that 2022 team. Not an afterthought. I mean, he was just, but he did play.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know, Gregory Soto gave them something last year.
Well, I think the trade was, hey, we need more bullpen help. That 2022 team just didn't have
right idea, wrong guy.
Yeah, I mean, it just didn't work out for you. But in hindsight, yeah, you got a guy he was hitting leadoff for them the other day. I mean, he's playing third, batting second in the playoff team's line. Who had Matt Vierling batting second on a playoff team? I don't think anybody.
No, I think that the thought would have been to turn the page from the Matt Vierlings of the world to get into the playoffs. But I'll tell you what, I mean, we're watching it in real time here. This is it's really impressive that Detroit's in this position. Not that I want to use up too much of our airtime talking about the Tigers here, but
I got to tell you, this series is so under the radar because of you got Philly, New York, the Yankees, and then San Diego and L.A. You got Cleveland and Detroit just so under the radar. They're playing at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. These playoff games being in the afternoon. Now, listen, I'm a proponent of day sports. I think live sports during the day is awesome. But to ask these guys to play live playoff games in the middle of the day, I think is ridiculous.
Not going to get any argument from me. Play the games over top of one another. Let the markets watch their games and go from there.
Yeah, I know. It's like you got a game at 3 o'clock here that you got to go playoff-like atmosphere in the middle of a day game. It just doesn't feel playoff. I hate when they do it in the NBA, too.
No, it looks like there's a good crowd out there, though, and I mean, especially when you look ahead to Game 3 here. Phillies-Mets. Citi Field's going to... What's that going to be? Orange October? Blue October?
What did they do out there? That was a big story, though. Friday was where the Met fans going to get in there. You were at the game Saturday, right?
I was at Game 1 Saturday.
Was there a lot of Met fans or not really?
In my section, no. There were about 5 or 6, in the actual section.
I heard about 2,000 was the estimate. That's pretty light.
Yeah, no, that's to be expected. I mean, come on, you're not going to keep every single Met fan out, but it wasn't a huge infiltration.
If I give you a ticket to go up there tomorrow, would you? All expenses paid?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've never been to Citi Field. You?
That's all right.
Yeah, I'd go. I mean, I
like it more from the outside than the inside.
Yeah. I love going to a live game. I mean, I'm not wearing a jersey.
You're not going to wear a Harper jersey up there.
No. I might wear a tee, like a low-key tee.
I'll tell you what, I'd rather watch it at my house with the kids spilling apple juice all over me.
All right, coming up, Sports Bash Live, the Fanatics Sportsbook, the Gallery Bar Book and Games. Lenny Kravitz is playing here. The Lenny Kravitz guy from the, you're a little younger than me.
Oh,
are you going to go my way?
Yeah.
American Woman?
Yeah, it's good.
November, it's his only dates on the East Coast, right here at Ocean Casino, Ovation Hall. This hour brought to you by Jersey Cal, Northfield Brigantine. They're open every day from noon to 10. Ice cream is a year-round thing at Jersey Cal. All right, more Sports Bash on the way. Don't forget the live stream video at Mike Gill Show on the X platform, at Mike Gill Show on YouTube. More Sports Bash coming up.
You're listening to the Sports.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
With Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
Swing and a high fly ball. Center field. Bader back. At the wall. Out of here. Way out of here. Off the batter's eye. The Bush is in center. Oh, baby, crushed it. Harper unloads, and this place going crazy. 0-1. Swing and a high fly ball. Left field. On its way. We are tied. Castellanos goes deep. Back to back. And they're going crazy at the bank.
As heard on 97.3 ESPN, Boog Sciambi on the call. Back-to-back jacks as the Phillies, a much-needed win. They tie the series at 1-1. This hour of the Sports Bash Live from the Fanatics Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Book and Games is brought to you by Jersey Cal, a great place for the family to hang out and eat ice cream year-round. Noon to 10, Brigantine and Northfield open every day. Ice cream's a year-round thing at Jersey Cal. All right, our on-site producer, Mike Gill. Bob Wankel's with me for this Monday show. And Peachy, of course, is our on-site producer. All right, no Knicks Nuggets today. Nick's got an assignment that he is working on today. So stepping in with Pete's observations in the bullpen. Now, don't be Jeff Hoffman with this segment.
No, I'm not.
All right? I don't want to see a Matt Strom situation with this segment.
My sweeper is very on point right now.
Pete's observations. What do we got?
All right, first inning, Saturday. Wheeler's
Time out, real quick. I got to read this text message.
Okay.
For one, real quick.
Hey,
Mike.
call on time.
Yeah. Regarding Game 5, 4 o'clock, why does MLB have to compete with high school football, putting many people in a pickle? Go Milford Buccaneers, Phillies at 4, BC Bowers Beach. Now, BC Bowers Beach has been texting in for a couple of years now, and I never had any freaking clue what Bowers Beach meant until yesterday. I took Route 1 home. It's a place in Delaware. Bowers Beach, Delaware.
Mike, you could have just...
Did you know that?
Could have just Googled it.
I didn't know. I don't know.
I mean, it's during the show. Sometimes.
Google Maps.
Bowers Beach, BC. I drove through there yesterday, so now I have a reference of where you are from.
I don't think Rob Manfred cares about high school football.
Yeah, Rob wasn't thinking about
the execs at Fox.
Friday Night Lights.
No, probably not. All right, go ahead.
No. All right, Wheeler, Saturday, first inning, Wheeler's 11-pitch inning, followed by Schwarber's 425 to right center. Have you seen a more dominant first inning in the playoffs from these Phillies in this run?
I mean, you get exactly what you want, right? It's the perfect blueprint. It starts the game off exactly the way you want. Wheeler
really did.
Dominant, and you get the home run from Schwarber. You can't ask for anything better than that. Of course, I went to put the bet in. Schwarber leadoff home run, and I'm in Delaware, so I couldn't do it.
Yeah, Delaware's got to.
Come on.
You got to cross over state lines, huh?
No, you can't get a better start than that, and that's kind of why I shrug my shoulders about the idea of momentum and all. I don't think, momentum's real, but is it? Like, how much does it really matter? I mean, you got all the momentum in the world at that point.
Yeah, I mean,
what'd that do for you?
It's such a weird conversation, momentum, because you feel like, the momentum's going one
you
way,
have momentum
then the game
until you
changes, and it's just like, listen, it's like everything.
Until Vientos hits a homer at a time. Yeah.
Everything is in the moment that it happens. Yeah. I mean, you could be a 380 hitter, but that means there's a large chunk of the time that you fail.
26 guys can have a ton of momentum. You hang a slider to Bryson Stott over the middle of the plate. Guess what?
Listen,
here it goes.
The fact that you brought up you hang a slider, I thought the decision of the day is Castellanos is looking ridiculous on slider. He looks like Castellanos that I remember in the Arizona series. And then Severino just lays something in there that's like, what are you doing, dude? Just go back to that slider every pitch. Now he held off the one. But I go right back to it again. Instead, it was like Cal Ripken in the All-Star game came to the plate. Who threw that? Who laid that in there for Cal Ripken?
Oh, man. You're not giving Nick any credit. Come on.
No, I'm giving Nick credit for tattooing a pitch that Severino shouldn't have thrown. What are you doing, Severino? I got to see what they called that pitch. They were waxing poetic early in that game about how Severino has thrown this year compared to last year, how many more sinkers he threw, all that stuff. So what pitch did he decide to throw in that moment there? I'll never know.
All right,
we get a little live entertainment today. What's going on here?
Hope so.
Got a big crowd at the bar. What's happened? Oh, you got baseball. That's why. Live games.
Number 2.
Live day games.
Brandon Nimmo seen mouthing off to JT after that homer and the Phillies dugout. Is he now on the Orlando Arcia level for Phillies fans? If not, who is? Alonso?
I've long
that was pretty bad though. I would go Nimmo right now.
Yeah, I've long found Brandon Nimmo to be annoying, to be honest with you. So yesterday didn't really change my opinion.
Did anybody?
Winker's pretty bad, but he doesn't play every day.
Did anybody get the transcription of the lip reading?
No, I don't think that John Boy or whoever did one of those.
I think
they asked
Sanchez,
JT
he
after
mentioned
the game.
Sanchez.
JT said I thought he said Sanchez, but I didn't really hear what he said, to be honest. So
No,
I don't know if he did that to not, to downplay it or not even let him get his moment in the sun or whatever it was. But we couldn't really get any answers on that one after the game.
He comes across the plate and he's like he's like saying something, and I did look like he was saying, "Where's Sanchez?"
Yeah.
Maybe him and Sanchez had a little something.
Yeah, I don't know.
But the question will be, does it get back to Philadelphia for that to even be something?
That's true. That's a good point. I think it will.
You think a split's coming?
Yes.
Which night?
I think Nola takes care of business.
I think
tomorrow.
Aaron Nola gets it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think Ranger. And
numbers not good on Nola out there, right?
Yeah, Nola's had a good career at Citi Field.
I saw something on the screen earlier. He was had a 5-something ERA somewhere.
Yeah, I got in 14 career starts at Citi Field, 3.28 ERA with 1.04 WHIP.
Okay.
Mets are 10 for 49 against him this season in 2 starts. hitting 204 against Aaron Nola.
I was an advocate of pitching Nola in Game 3, so I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
Now you feel pretty good, except for the people who are the anti-Nolas.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they can't lose. He either wins or he doesn't, and then they get to be right. And isn't that, at the end of the day, what's most important?
Generally,
being right in your group text as a hater.
That's the most important thing in life.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, it was an 86-mile-per-hour sweeper that he threw Castellanos.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, come on, dude.
He said he made 2 mistakes all day, and one of them was to Harper, and one of them was Castellanos. It all happened within 2 minutes of one another.
99 four-seamer. Tattooed. That thing was crushed.
All right, so we know about the homers yesterday, but what was the most underrated moment of last night's game? I go Turner, 2-out walk in the 9th. That sets up Bryce to come up. He was up 3-0 in that count, by the way. Then he gets 2 strikes called on him, but then he draws the walk.
Yeah.
So I go Turner's walk.
Huge at bat, especially after how bad he was on Saturday. I mean, just expanding the zone. Another hitless performance in a playoff game dating back to last year. That had been, I believe 4 in a row. I mean, so for him to bear down in that spot and keep the line moving, I thought was huge.
By the way, the at-bat right after Harper, it's a 7-pitch at-bat. Yeah. After he walks Harper, so what's the mindset in your guys' head as you're watching this game, okay? Because you could walk Harper, but now you're putting the winning run on second base. But you do have 2 outs. So you're going after Castellanos with first and second, because they mentioned that Turner's not going to steal, because if he steals, then they'll walk Harper. Right. They'll put him on. So you had this whole game going on. But would you have walked Harper intentionally in that spot?
They had 2 strikes on Harper.
They did. It ended up being a 7-pitch at bat. He fouled 3 pitches off, and then he walks on the 7th pitch. It's a splitter. He ends up walking.
Well, once he hooks the ball down the right field line in the corner and almost wins the game, I go, all right, I'm good. You take your base. I'll deal with it.
Right, so you would have walked him.
I would have at that point, yeah.
I was indifferent. I was going back and forth. I'm like, do they walk him here and they just go after Castellanos? I don't know. I mean, Castellanos hit the home run earlier, but I can't imagine that. Now, he ends up walking him, and it's not that big of a deal anyway, and you ended up losing to Castellanos. But that was kind of a big at-bat there, because people forget, this all happened with 2 outs.
Yeah.
Well, are the Mets pitchers and Mendoza, for that matter, are they now scared of Harper officially?
Well, they've been scared of him the whole series.
Yeah, I mean, I heard Larry Boa say this last week, and he just said, the one thing I know about this series is that the Mets have to internally, as they game plan for the Phillies lineup, just make a commitment to saying Bryce Harper's not going to be the guy that beats us. And I think that there has been a lot of evidence to this point that they really want to stay away from him. That's why having that protection behind him is so important.
Here's a moment we haven't brought up, but it's a huge spot in the game. Real Muto rolls that one to third, and Vientos can't get it. If he fields that cleanly, I think Stott's probably out at the plate.
Yeah, I kind of thought it would be bang-bang at the plate. I still think the way Stott runs it, he might have beat that anyway, but independent, I mean, of whether he would or wouldn't have, it was a huge sequence. I mean, just the ability, and I know it's sort of corny, and you hear baseball coaches say this all the time, myself included, but, just put the ball in play and see if something good happens. And that's what happened in that spot.
Right, and he rolls this over, and, it looks like Vientos just tried throwing before, he really was there, and he ends up bobbling the ball. But that extra run, think about that 6th run that comes across after what happens the next inning. Now, Vientos covers up his mistake. Right. That guy has been unbelievable.
Yeah. That's my next question. Vientos 2 homers last night, and he's got 5 hits in 2 games. If the Mets are afraid of Bryce, Phillies pitchers, is Vientos the guy that we have to get out?
Yeah, I think I don't know that you're afraid of him the way that the Mets might be afraid of Harper, but I think you certainly have to be aware of him at this point and how well he has swung the bat. So I think you have to alter your game plan a little bit with him. And
it's a good question, because I mean, he was on my fantasy team this year, so I kind of realized who he was and what he was doing.
He was a late call-up, right?
He wasn't like a monster in the regular season.
No, the third baseman, who was their prospect? Batty. He started up there, and he just had flopped. So Vientos made the team. They sent him back. They brought him back. And the guy had, 24, 25 home runs this year and didn't play the whole year. But, see, that's an interesting question is Lindor, who had been hurt and the back problem. They said yesterday during the broadcast he has to take 40 minutes every day to get his back ready to play. But I wonder if the guy – I don't know what you think about Alonso at this point. Like, if you're the Phillies, are you worried about him? I mean, now he's hit 2 homers. You don't like Alonso?
I know we're not like live streaming here. I'm making this face like I just bit into like
an onion.
Stale, yeah, like an onion. I don't know.
He's the power.
I'm never going to be like. I hate this because I feel like I'm setting myself up for old takes exposed. But like, go get him. Don't mess around with that guy. Go pitch to him. Don't be scared of Pete Alonso.
But
Lindor is the guy. Like, Lindor is the guy that when he comes off, I say, you better be careful here.
But Alonso's like the mojo guy.
Yeah.
Like, if he gets going.
But that's the thing. He's been so bad. He hits that home run in the game against Milwaukee. Now he's got one here. He's been so bad for so long. Is his, Castellanos moment of streaky hot coming?
Oh, good. Then I look forward to Alec Boehm going off in Game 3. I look forward to Bryson Stott's continued success. Maybe Yohan Rojas will have a 3-hit game tomorrow, too.
He did have a hit the other day.
Yeah, that's great.
And he will steal those bases.
Well, they were stealing all over the place. They kept stealing third, though, because the Mets weren't really doing anything. But that was another story in the game. The Phillies keep leaving a guy on third base with 2 outs. They can't get that hit. They can't get that hit. They can't get that hit. You know, I don't know, man. Vientos, you wonder, how hot can he stay?
Yeah, nice player. Nice player.
All right, finally, Cassie and these bleeping people. Then he mashes that home run the next at bat. I guess my question is, are these me and Bob were talking about this during one of the breaks. Are these players kind of on a slippery slope when they talk so great about the fans at Red October and all this, and then the cameras catch Cassie kind of giving out his true feelings, I'll say.
I have a take on the Castellanos thing, which we haven't really talked about this that much because it was more about what he did rather than what he said. Thank God, by the way. But we ask these athletes to relate to the fans all the time, right? Just try to connect with us. How about we, as the fans, try to connect with the player?
You're going to put on the fans now.
I'm saying with the fans. I'm not saying don't do the Bronx cheer. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is in that moment, understand the athlete. And I loved it because if it were me up there and I were Nick Castellanos and I was wailing away at sliders out of the strike zone and I heard that Bronx cheer, I would have said the exact same thing. I would have said the exact same thing.
Cassie's an interesting guy.
He is definitely an interesting guy. Do you consider Cassie a good interview or a lousy one?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes, it's interesting. A lot of the stuff ends up going viral because it's so
he's
awkward.
So bad that he's good, I would say.
It's like uncomfortably
It's
good.
very uncomfortable. I wouldn't say as somebody that you're, that's talking to him that you're intimidated, but you just know what you're about to get into.
Yeah, so that's the problem. Once you get to the national level,
but
you know what he does? That they know what they're getting into?
You know what he does, though? If you ask him a stupid question, he's going to basically tell you that it's a stupid question by the way that he answers it. He will give you a real answer if you ask a real question. But if you do one of those, what was going through your mind?
That's what they did after Harper's homer. He said nothing. He said, I don't know.
Okay.
I wanted to hit the ball. That's how
he
plays
I love, what was in your mindset at that point?
Yeah.
I wanted to get a hit. No, yeah. Obviously, I get all. But here's the thing I would say about these bleeping people or blah, 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 blah. Okay? Sometimes, though, I think the players have to understand they're not booing you. They're booing the result of what just happened. And if you could separate that, which I don't think...
But they are, in fact, booing you because you are the reason that result happened.
Yeah, but they're booing the result. They're not saying... Now, some of them are like, Casty, you suck, blah, blah, blah. But, most of the time, the boo is the result of the result of what they just saw. No?
Boehm getting booed for those errors, that's Alec Boehm getting booed for those errors. That's Alec Boehm.
Yeah, but if Alec Boehm didn't, like yesterday, Sosa makes the error, he gets booed.
But this is why I'm so glad that they won the game so we didn't have to do this, because you're watching it at home or someone's watching it at home, and plenty of people were probably saying as he's flailing away at these pitches 7-8 inches off the plate.
Yeah, you suck.
This bleeping guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So then they start booing at the stadium, and then you get these bleeping people from him. We're all the same here. You know, other than that he can play professional sport and make $20 million a year, and I'm on my couch telling him what he should do in real time with the entire country watching.
Right, because you're watching it, and, you know, well, you go to, like, your wife or girlfriend, and they're watching it, and they say, how does he swing at that?
What's he swinging
exactly.
at? Yeah.
Like, so when they can break it down to, what are you swinging at?
I mean, look, Mike, as a guy that was 6 for 18 as a high school senior and played like 4 games for his team, I am in a position to tell Nick Castellanos what he should and should not be doing.
Well, and this is why we go back to, you know, McGarry said earlier he thought Rob Thompson had a rough day.
Yeah.
You know, were you watching the game thinking that Rob Thompson had a rough day?
You know, we talked about it earlier in the show. I was not a fan of the Jose Ruiz decision in the 6th inning. I thought that was pretty passive, and I think at the end of the day, he's very lucky that they went on to win the game, because had they not, I think that decision would have been amplified tenfold.
And the Bohm decision, too.
Yeah.
The Bohm. Now, he did say something last night that I thought was interesting. He said, no, we had those guys. That was our pockets that we had discussed before the game. So it goes back to the conversation that always kind of comes up. Is that Rob Thompson making that decision in the moment?
So I didn't, other than the pitching decision in the 6th, I didn't really mind what Rob did yesterday. We asked him after last postseason to be more aggressive, to pinch hit, to not overly rely and be complacent with his players. And so he did pinch hit yesterday.
What about pinch hitting Bohm for Sosa after you benched Bohm for Sosa?
Well, I think you see Sosa's first couple of bats too, and you kind of have to say to yourself,
that's
like,
fair.
All right, you know, I mean, they were poor at bats.
Not to mention Sosa made an error in the field, which, you know, didn't help his cause either. I don't know, man. In the next hour, we'll get into this a little bit more, but, you know, they got a lot of decisions to make. I mean, this is a weird situation where you win the game, but now you have all these other decisions come from the win and the way you won the game. You get a Stott triple. He's hitting in the 5-hole. Well, now they're going Minaya, and Stott has struggled all year against lefties. You have this decision. Do I stick with Stott because you know what's going to happen? Oh, yeah. Now you sit the guy after he has the triple. You know, that happens all the time during the regular. Guy goes 5 for 5. The next day he sits. Then Joe on his couch says, oh, sure, sit the guy that had 5 hits yesterday. But getting 5 hits yesterday has nothing to do with today.
Well, one of the things that Doug Glanville said earlier when we talked to him was you also have to consider what does it look like later in the game and what matchups might you want off the bench later in the game. And you know, certainly the Mets are primarily right-handed out of the pen late. So, like, is that another factor? So, like, I want that flexibility to be able to go to Bryson Stott, to be able to go to a Cody Clemens late to get some of these higher leverage right-handed relievers. Right. I don't know.
We'll continue the conversation. We're going to open the text board up. You guys can jump in. We got a lot of texts from earlier in the show that we'll hit on coming up next. 609-403-0973. The text board is open. 609-403-0973. Your favorite moment of yesterday's game, other than Cassiano obviously winning the game. He also made a nice catch in right field, by the way, that gets overshadowed sometimes because Casty, not the greatest outfielder. But all of the moments, which was your favorite moment of the game yesterday? 609-403-0973. We have that on our X platform at 973 ESPN. This hour brought to you by Jersey Cal, open year-round for ice cream.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
5 o'clock, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform, at Mike Gill Show on YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. I'm Mike Gill, Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad. Is Red October Philly back or what? What's going on?
No, we had to make some structural changes.
Okay. I miss it.
Yeah,
it was very in-depth and well done.
I appreciate that.
Am I guilting you back into it?
Maybe
really.
Next season.
Okay.
Maybe next season. We'll see.
It was very
Build
well
up a nice little audience on it, too. But.
Red October Philly, baby. They love it. Well, Phillies win in really memorable, epic fashion. I mean, I think we're so in the moment right now, but to look back at what kind of game you got yesterday, wherever you might have watched it, whatever you might have been doing, I didn't really have any Like, I know the Eagles didn't play. It would have been weird if the Eagles did play, how that would have kind of, like, filtered in. But I didn't feel like I was missing any of the football yesterday. Nothing. That game was so, like, you were just so locked into that game. It was such an unbelievable, it had everything. It had everything in that game. We've been asking people, what's your favorite moment from the game yesterday? Is there something that stands out? Obviously, Castellanos' game-winning hit is the best, but is there a moment in the game yesterday that stands out of, like, when you look back at this game 10, 20 years from now, if they end up winning a World Series, you say, it's like the Segura hit.
Yeah.
Everybody remembers that hit in the game against the Cardinals. Did that game have that? There were just so many of them. But it was like the 2022 team, Bob, that you could go back and be like, the bat spike, the Harper home run against Suarez, and it's the pod. There were so many different things, and this game had so many of them in one game.
And that's the shame of all of this, right? Like, it's a great game. It's an all-time game. And independent of what happens, maybe we get to a point where we say, wow, you rank the best games in the history of Citizens Bank Park. I suspect, however, with the expectations and the pressure and it all being about an end result, and I wonder about this, and I wonder how people have consumed this series and consumed yesterday's game. Are we really going to be able to enjoy that game for what it was if they don't get to the World Series or win this series?
No, no way.
Because it's going to just be, it was fun, but, like, who cares?
Right. You're not going to look back and be like, it's one of those games, too, that's like, I was there. If they end up winning this whole thing, it's like, that was the one. Yeah. Because somebody just texted in, 609-403-0973. The best moment has to be the Bryce Harper bomb. That place was dead. The team was down and out, and boom, a moonshot. Like, that home run saves the season, essentially.
Yeah, you just don't want it to be a footnote in a 4 or 5 game series loss to the New York Mets. And like, that's the thing. Like, right now for me, I don't know how you are, but I watched that game. I was excited in the moment. I was fired up, right? And about 30 minutes later, I had turned the page. Like, I'm thinking Game 3, Manaea, Nola. Hey, Aaron, this is like, what's amazing about this, and I know you guys have a show tomorrow. You'll talk before the game. I look at this and say, this was about running it back with primarily the same team, and the guy that you decided to go all in on to keep this unit together, to keep the same group together, is Aaron Nola. And he is going to start the pivotal game of this series. And is he going to deliver?
Well, listen, Bob, the conversation leading into it was, do you start Sanchez in Game 2? Do you have the goal to go to a kid and basically push Nola, who had been your opening day guy? Then you have Wheeler. He kind of handed the torch over to Wheeler there. Then you sign him to this big deal in the offseason when people were kind of over Nola. There's so many nights where you have a 2-0 lead and then he coughs it up. The Nola coaster that you go on all the time. And here he is now back in position to either win you back over. Now, people have mentioned how many big games he has pitched in. He has pitched in clinchers, deciding games, all these things. But here is the moment right here for Nola again. And it's like, you're only as good as your most recent moment. And he's had so many, he pitched the game that clinched the, playoff berth for them this year. He did it in 2022. He's had so many defining wins. Yet I feel like people still don't believe in him. And here he is tomorrow night. So it all sets up because, now, did you think they had the audacity to pitch Suarez in Game 2? And is audacity the right word?
Sanchez or Suarez?
Sanchez.
Okay,
sorry.
Sanchez. Well, I like the decision. And look,
it was a flat-out splits decision.
Yeah,
I think Sanchez is the better pitcher than Nola, right?
No, it's about, hey, I have two good options here. This was a good problem for the Phillies to have. It wasn't like, hey, we're rolling the dice. What would have really been rolling the dice is if Christopher Sanchez didn't exist and you said, you were in the same spot with a guy like Ranger Suarez who had been throwing the ball poorly. That would be really rolling the dice. At least Rob had two options at his disposal where he said, all right, look, I can use some logic behind this and still feel pretty good either way.
Yeah, just think about how lucky they are.
I thought this was the right decision, and I did before it played out the way it did with Christopher Sanchez yesterday.
But think how lucky they are that this kid came out of nowhere. I mean, literally came out of nowhere. Christopher Sanchez was a guy who was so erratic. He couldn't throw strikes consistently, and last year he gets to the point where you're kind of trusting him. He pitched like the fourth game. He was that fourth guy. And now this year, he's at the point where you said, you know what, you're going to pitch game 2 of the playoff series, and we're going to push Nola back a game. I mean, it took a little bit of, I think, audacity to make that decision.
It certainly took a leap of faith, and I mean, but you're seeing the difference between a kid that did struggle with command at times, who had a plus pitch in his changeup, and that thing was electric last year, and that's what really got him in the conversation. That's how he ended up as your game 4 starter last year, in the NLCS against Arizona. The thing here for me, or was that game 3 that he started? I actually forget now that I'm going back thinking about it. Yeah, was that against the Diamondbacks?
Yep.
But now it's 97 and a little bit better control, and still has the plus pitch and the changeup. And I mean, he's legit. I mean, we have to get to a point with him where we say, hey, Philly's got a top of the rotation guy here in Christopher Sanchez.
Well, you just mentioned, you don't know about, as soon as that game's over, you're turning the page. You're right. I mean, you're doing this job and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, all the moments, everything is great. But generally when the team wins, everyone's happy, but they're like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Yeah, you want to reflect and go back. The Harper home run is unbelievable. I mean, it goes to, I think he tied Schwarber for most home runs now in team history. You think about this crew, Schwarber, Harper, they've now passed over the Harpers and the Rollins and the Utleys, except for one area. They don't have the World Series.
And I think that's what adds extra pressure and adds extra expectation to this whole thing.
You and I talked about it Friday, though. If this group doesn't get it done, then what?
Because you're talking about all-timers, right? If this Phillies team does it this year, wins a World Series, think about the level that these guys go to and how they're going to be remembered for forever in this city. Kyle Schwarber, I mean, is he a Mount Rushmore guy? No. But he's one of the most beloved Phillies, probably, he's on a short list of maybe the top 15, 20 most beloved Phillies of all time. He's their leader. He's the guy. And everybody knows what he means to them from a chemistry standpoint and from a leadership standpoint. If they win the World Series, I'm telling you, he goes to that level. He's that guy.
It's such an interesting thing, like Schwarber, because, he's not the most talkative guy. When he talks, he's very quiet, concise. He's not, but I don't know. He is a weird one.
It must be, maybe I'm using some of my, reporter experience and having been down there and having been in that clubhouse. I can tell you unequivocally, he is the guy. When it comes to leadership, he is, not to say he's the only guy, but I think he is the primary driver of it. And I think it started back in 2022 at the end of September when the Phillies were going through their collapse and everybody said, same old Phillies, this is a total waste of time. I think it was Kyle Schwarber's influence and his experience and his winning pedigree that got that team over the hump, got them into the playoffs, and then drove that bus all the way to the World Series.
Well, and it's such an interesting, now that you're saying, we forget yesterday too. Severino's in the game. Clemens flies out. Schwarber grounds out. Turner gets a single with 2 outs. You forget about Turner has to get on base there, and then Harper hits the homer, then Castellanos. But Turner's another one. He has won a World Series. Schwarber has won a World Series, yet they haven't done it here. And it's like, the whole standing ovation thing for Turner last year, but is he connected the way we thought it was?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that people have embraced Trey Turner the way, and I understand that the standing ovation happened, and that was a nice moment, but I don't think that there's been this embrace of him quite yet. It's like, what do we have in this guy? We have a pretty good ball player, but he's sort of streaky, and I know that he had some hits of significance in the postseason last year, especially against Atlanta. But you just feel like you're waiting for that signature Trey Turner moment. I actually did wonder in the 9th inning. I mean, he was obviously key in what happened, sparking that final run in the walk-off. But I was like, is this the moment he does it? Does he go deep here, and does he become that dude?
Yeah.
And kind of get himself ingrained and ingratiated with this fan base?
Well, he also has an 11-year contract. I think that has everything to do with.
Well, I'll tell you what, the 11-year deal is a good point to bring up, because when he signed here.
It's a long time.
It is a long, long time. But when he signed here, you remember right after he signed, he went on this epic run in the World Baseball Classic. And you're thinking, wow, you're adding this guy to Harper and Schwarber. And it feels like it hasn't been what you thought. And even though, at the end of the day, you look at his numbers, you're like, man, a really good year.
Yeah, he had a very good year.
But it just doesn't feel like it has the impact of him hitting here and him hitting behind him like that it should. Is that
Yeah, I mean, look, independent of what happens here, I'm going to get to the offseason. You're going to say, hey, what do you think they need to do, right? And I'm going to tell you I think they need another impact bat. And you're like, well, how many years in a row can we do this?
Yeah, well, that's
I think
the thing. Well, part of it is, yes, you're right. You look at this team and this series, you're hitting Bryson Stott in the 5-hole right now because you don't have an impact bat. And listen, I like Bohm. I like Bohm's approach. But to me, if I'm being honest, Bohm shouldn't be hitting 4 or 5. He should be hitting 6 or 7. Like, if he's hitting 6 or 7 on this team, you're looking at Bohm as a totally different kind of guy. Now, he's done a admirable job driving runs in, hitting in a spot in the order that he shouldn't be in. I can admit that. Like, I like Bohm. I think he's a 6 or 7 hitter, though, not a 4 or 5 hitter.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So you look at, you make the trade for Austin Hayes. That certainly hasn't worked out. So they went again with a team that just doesn't have and look, you just mentioned it. Schwarber makes a lot of money. I mean, we forget about it. He makes over $100 million. Turner makes $300 million. Harper makes $325. We forget Castellanos makes makes $100 million. The impact of Castellanos isn't as much as he carried this team yesterday.
Hating on Castellanos.
I'm just saying, when you signed him, this guy hit 300 with 34 homers and 100 RBI, and he got paid. It's like Jalen Hurts. He got paid on that season.
He did. And
he is not performing to that level, and that's part of the reason why this offense has its questions, because the guys that you paid, in the end, you're looking at and saying, am I getting $300 million out of production out of Trey Turner?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're going to have decisions to make, and you're going to have one more year of Kyle Schwarber under contract at about $20 million. You're going to have Nick Castellanos under contract for 2 more years beyond this one at about $20 million per. Can you add to that? Can you figure, hey, that these contracts will expire at some point? We can go out and add another guy at $20-25 million that's going to make a big-time offensive impact. You re-sign Kyle Schwarber. I think right now I'm inclined to say that they probably will. But what's his market going to be like? And would he be willing to take a little bit less to stay here and keep this intact? These are all questions to be answered. Probably not today, but stuff that you have to think about. And unfortunately, the reality of the situation is you might have to think about these questions and the answers to them a lot sooner than you'd like to.
Yeah, listen, and yesterday's game certainly hits the pause button on all those decisions, because if you lose that game yesterday, that's the first thing everybody's thinking.
That's what we're talking about right now.
Right. It's the first thing everybody's thinking is, there's no way you're coming back and winning this series, right? There's no way you're going on the road, winning 2, and then coming back here and winning another one. You're pretty much confined to that. And them doing that yesterday, and it's the guys that did it. That, to me, is what stands out. It's Harper and Castellanos, who I've been really tough on. I get it. But, hey, he did what your expectations of him were when they got him. Is you're the guy that's going to hit behind Harper and protect him. Sadly, they had to move him out of that spot last year because he couldn't do it. They had to put Alec Bohm in that spot.
I would not be surprised tomorrow with Sean Manaea on the mound if JT Realmuto was not in the 5 spot. I think that's where they're going to go here. JT Realmuto did not have a very good weekend at the plate offensively. However, he did hit .284 in September. He had an OPS north of 800. And on this team right now, with some of the limitations in their options, it's probably the most attractive one if you're not going to stick with Bohm in a 5 spot. Or, and again, I don't think even if Stott plays, I don't know that you can trust him to that degree to hit him 5th. So, to me, that's the obvious place to go at this point.
Well, that's the thing is, okay, Bohm's back in the lineup. Where does he go?
I would not hit him in the middle 3rd. I would actually hit him 7th tomorrow if that's how I would do it. Because what I would do is I would go Castellanos 4. I would go Realmuto 5. Let's assume Stott. Let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, Stott plays. I would hit him 6th. I'd hit Bohm 7th. I can't run 3 righties in the middle of the order altogether.
And then Hayes is hitting 8th and Rojas is hitting 9th?
Yeah. I mean, I know that the idea is like maybe you can plug Austin Hayes in and hit him 5th or 6th, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did this. This is what I would do versus what they might do.
Yep.
Just Austin Hayes has not put together anything that makes me say, yes, let's hit him somewhere in the middle of this lineup. And hopefully he has that breakout game. You say, thank God they traded for that guy. But right now, coming into this matchup,
I gotta tell you,
it's not great.
When he came up yesterday and against a right-handed pitcher. Now, I guess he had gone in as a defensive replacement, and he comes up in the ninth or whenever it was. Was it the ninth? I think it was the ninth. He led off the ninth, and you're thinking, really?
Yeah.
Hayes here now, right? I mean, like, you're at the point where you'd rather see Cody Clemens swing the bat than Austin Hayes, and probably Weston Wilson.
Yeah.
Right?
And look, I mean, he was hurt. He went up. He was actually shelved twice. I mean,
it's all encompassing, though, isn't it?
You know, it's all part of it, though. I mean, unfortunately, the reality is that in the times that he's gotten opportunities, he just is not. He's not shown them anything.
Yeah, I listen. It was one of the big discussions leading into this was, are they going to play Hayes every day? Yeah. Like, it looked like their intentions were to play Hayes every day until the injuries and all this kind of came up, and then maybe they had a reverse course, because you're wondering if they were going to play Hayes in left every day, Marsh over in center, and then even against, lefties, were they just going to keep Marsh out there just because they wanted to play? They had guys texting in, on the text board, just like, they're going to play Hayes because they traded for him.
I expect Austin Hayes to start tomorrow.
That is true. I mean, why would you trade for him if you're not going to put him in against a lefty in the playoffs?
But they have said many times that they viewed him as an everyday player.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the kidney issue, I think, was the final blow to that happening this year as an everyday guy. Well, but I do think he will start tomorrow.
I know this is a really broad, big picture question, but like right now with the way Bohm's going and everything else, is this lineup good enough?
Well, I would tell you that it is not if this is the bullpen that they're going to get. If the idea is that the Phillies are going to need to outslug their pitching deficiencies, then no. I mean, they're not built to do this. As much as we want to rattle off all of these names and all of these salaries and say, oh, look, they should score 6-7 runs a game. That's just not the reality of the situation. The reality is that they have a couple guys that can thump. They can get hot for a couple days here and there, but there's not a ton of consistency. This team is built to hit a couple home runs, get good starting pitching, and use a bullpen that's 5 or 6 deep, in theory, to come in and close out these games. They're supposed to be able to extinguish fires late in games. And that is the one thing that has me a little bit anxious about this week. If you told me that they were going to split at home, I'd say no problem. I still think that the Phillies have the advantage. I think they'll win at least one game at Citi Field, and I'll take Zach Wheeler. I'll take my chances with him at home in a Game 5. But what does have me nervous is that if Matt Strahm and Jeff Hoffman aren't going to be Matt Strahm and Jeff Hoffman, that changes the math on everything, and they do have deficiencies in this lineup.
And it's something that I brought up all season long, was whenever you get a game where the Phillies could do something that a lot of teams couldn't. They can get their starter to pitch into the 6th inning or the 7th, and I would say this is the blueprint for the Phillies to win, is your starter gives you 6, and then you had these 4 or 5 relievers. Any combination of Strahm, Hoffman, Alvarado, Kerkering, and then you added Estevez to the mix. If you could get 3 of those 5 guys to pitch the 7th, 8th, and 9th, you're pretty much feeling pretty good that you have a chance to win that game.
Nobody wants to hear this, but you ask Dave Dombrowski, like, their internal conversations, they say, what's the strength of this team? And they say, well, we have 3 starting pitchers that we feel great about. The Suarez thing is sort of going off the rails here.
Well, that's the point. Is Game 4. What happens in Game 4?
And that's what's so scary about it. Right? Because I'd say, hey, listen, they can survive. They're built to survive a 2-3 inning, very aggressive hook on Ranger Suarez because of how deep and how versatile this bullpen is. But that's all said, closing your eyes and pretending this weekend didn't happen.
Here's a question for you. Yesterday's game, 2023, Alvarado's pitching that 9th inning, does he not?
Yeah, I mean... Probably.
Kimbrel.
Kimbrel. But Alvarado was ahead of Strahm.
Right. No, I'd say Kimbrel wasn't here.
In terms of the left-handed options, right. Yes. I mean,
if this was last year, the way Alvarado had been throwing, and the 9th inning came, you probably would have gone to him yesterday.
He hasn't pitched at all. He hasn't pitched yet.
No.
But there's nothing that Matt Strahm has done that would make you hesitate to go to him, and that's the. That's the shame of it, I guess, for Matt Strahm. It's a shame of it for the Phillies, is that he had just a nightmare weekend. And I said it earlier, and I'll repeat it if you're just getting in the car now, but Matt Strahm did not give up runs in back-to-back appearances this season. He gave up multiple runs 4 times, and 3 times after April 1st. And he gave up multiple runs in both appearances this weekend. You're just not expecting that.
No, and you said it earlier, and I have to agree with you. Like, the one guy I think both of us kind of were iffy on was Estevez, And he was the one guy who came in and threw a clean 8-pitch inning, and then you're wondering, do you just stick with him? And they went to Strahm. I was really surprised. What's this like? I would have no qualms going back to Strahm at all. I was surprised he was the guy yesterday.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, these are the guys they're going to have to rely on, obviously. And if you're the Phillies, you're just hoping that the greater body of work is more indicative of what's going to happen than what we saw in a very, very isolated small sample size.
So is the message that he went to Strahm that he lost some confidence in Hoffman?
I don't think so. I think that in the spot that you went to Hoffman yesterday in the 8th inning, you just said to yourself, like, we have got to get through this inning. Like, we can't, or I'm sorry, he went to Strahm first,
in
right?
The middle, yeah. And then he goes in the middle.
So, no, I think it's about Lindor. So I think the whole thing was really about Lindor, is why he went to Strahm.
They wanted him to hit right-handed?
Yeah. I think that they like the matchup. And, like, when they do this, it's not just, let's look at the platoon splits. Let's turn them around. It's about this is how, so everyone understands this. The conversation is not just, okay, can he hit lefties? Can he hit righties? Where do we prefer him to hit in this situation? It's about pitch profiles. What does this guy throw? What type of break does it have? How does that work against a hitter's swing path? I mean, this is all part of the conversations that they have. And so when you hear Rob talk about pockets, these are the things that they evaluate when they make these decisions on paper hours before the game starts.
Now, Lindor did get he singled.
He did.
And then Vientos comes up and hits the home run.
Now, you also have to execute. I mean, Strahm gets ahead against...
Well, you couldn't take him out at that point because you have to face
You're
Spring.
in. Yeah. You're in. Yeah, I mean, look, it comes down to execution. You can lay it out on paper. I mean, we all know this. You can lay it out on paper however you want and say this makes sense and this pitch profile works against this swing plane and... you still got to make your pitch.
But you just brought it up, and Thompson brought it up. Like, this was the pockets that they had kind of predetermined before the game.
Yeah.
Do they do that for Game 4 when everyone's got a pitch?
Well,
assumingly,
I think they reshuffle the deck and go back over the pockets again.
I think that there's a plan A where we get depth out of Ranger, which is probably max 4 innings at this point. I think that they're going to.
What is more likely? That Ranger comes back with the no heartbeat Ranger and comes out and throws a Jemski, or that Ranger is the Ranger that we saw in September?
I'm going to be a coward and middle this. I think that he's going to give them 3 or 4 innings of competitive baseball, empty the tank, and maybe 2 runs. Like, I think it'll be okay.
Because this guy's been pretty important to this team in 2022 and 2023. So to have him not on the radar at all entering these playoffs feels a little weird.
Aaron Noel better go 6 tomorrow.
Ooh, baby. All right, we're getting ready to we got only a half hour left. Holy mackerel, we're flying today.
Still nothing, by the way, in Tigers Guardians.
Scooble. Could have traded for him at the deadline.
Could have traded for Scooble, yeah.
Well, that was one of the buzzes, right?
Could he hit cleanup?
Right, could he hit cleanup?
No, we have a cleanup guy now.
That's right, man. He won in the game yesterday.
I agree.
We're live here at the Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Book and Games. Let me tell you about my friends over at the Nizam's Indian Restaurant, Route 40 in Egg Harbor Township. They got an awesome deal happening right now. Ready for this? They've got, during the Eagles games, check out their Eagles football specials. Free tandoori spicy chicken wings the week the Eagles win for dine-in customers only. So if the Eagles win on Sunday, you can win that whole next week. You get free wings at Nizam's Indian Restaurant, Route 40, Egg Harbor Township. Special lunch buffet on Sunday from 11:30 to 3. And they're open 7 days a week, 11:30 to 9:30. All right, coming up, we got the big 3. More Sports Bash rolling on live at the Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Book and Games on 97.3 ESPN.
We have the perfect.
The Humana Gold Plus Give Back Medicare Advantage Plan gives you $1,368 back each year in your Social Security check. Choose coverage that helps you keep more money in your pocket. Learn more at GetHumana.com. Humana, a more human way to healthcare. The Part B Give Back benefit pays part or all of your Part B premium, and the amount may change based on the amount you pay for Part B. Limitations and restrictions may apply. Humana is a Medicare Advantage HMO and PPO organization with a Medicare contract. Enrollment in any Humana plan depends on contract renewal.
Traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, live from the Fanatic Sportsbook, the Gallery Bar Book and Games. If you were to place one bet on this series, here's $100. Go to that window right now. What's your best bet moving forward?
Phillies Mets?
Yep.
Phillies in 5.
Phillies in 5.
Exact series result.
Exact series result. I like that.
Yeah, some plus odds action for you.
I got my Bet365 play of the day. I gave you 6 plays on Friday. Every one of them hit, so I hope you played them.
Now, you're not making any money on these.
Well, I was in Delaware. You can't bet down there.
Well, you got to take that short drive to Maryland or PA and just place the bet and then come right on back.
I'm on the ferry. I wasn't thinking about it. I recommend the ferry. You ever been on the ferry before, Bob?
I have
Wagner,
not
by the
been
way.
on the ferry before.
Good time. You just drive over and then come right back.
If I ever going somewhere that is so unsophisticated that it doesn't have legal online sports betting, I pack my suitcase, I sit down, I make my deposit into the account, and I place all my bets. It's like part of my preparation for a trip.
I didn't realize Delaware didn't have it.
Yeah.
And then I tried to log in, and it was like, there was like messages like you could be arrested if you try to place the bet. Like the authorities will come find you. I was getting all these messages. I was like, come on.
Like, on the app?
Yeah, they got a message on the screen. It was like if you try to place a bet in this state, like because it was like pretty authoritative. I was like, oh, geez.
My bad. I just didn't know it hadn't passed yet.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I didn't realize. I thought Delaware had sports betting. Yeah. I guess not.
I guess in person they do, but maybe not online. Is that right?
I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I think you can place in person bets.
I certainly couldn't place on the app. I tried.
I know you can't do that. No.
All right, today's Big 3, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Brought to you by Key Acura of Atlantic City for a great car buying experience. Go see my guy Rocco and the Key Acura team at Key Acura of Atlantic City. Tilton Road, EHT, your small but friendly dealer online, Key Acura, AtlanticCity.com. All right, Josh, what do we got today?
Mike, my big story first. I got to ask you about the news that came out earlier today. Shams going to ESPN. But, Mike, there's a little more than that. ESPN's Burke Magnus has confirmed in an interview with Front Office Sports and SBJ, Sports Business Journal. They did a little presser go whip around. He said, quote, that they explored a number of options, including Jeff Passan potentially replacing Woj. So first, Mike, your thoughts on Shams going to ESPN, and number 2, ESPN confirming that Passan could have been the next Woj.
I thought the Shams thing was a fait accompli, really.
Yes, it felt like the natural,
pretty logical,
natural progression.
Yeah,
right.
The only thing, I do a podcast that's very sports media centric. We'll have our podcast on tomorrow. But I also, this is one of the things that we'll talk about tomorrow in depth on that podcast. But that being said, I think McAfee has a lot of pull over there. And Shams is McAfee's guy. They would take shots at Woj on that show all the time. And I think, McAfee's voice of taking Shams and kind of pushing him. The passing thing never made a lot of sense other than him and Woj worked together at Yahoo. And that maybe Woj was pushing for him. I got to imagine Woj is not thrilled with this.
I don't know. I mean, Woj moved on, right?
Yeah,
so
but him and Shams do not get along very well. That whole rivalry that they had.
Was he going to handpick his successor?
Well, I think if Jeff Passan's name was in the mix, that he was like
NBA insider in waiting.
But then there's like a domino effect because if Jeff Passan becomes the NBA insider, then they got to hire somebody to tweet about Shohei Ohtani every 4 minutes. So
Jesse Rogers.
I was saying, do they really care about baseball?
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, they won't in about a couple of years when they kind of lose their...
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So they know basketball, NBA is higher up their priority list than the 3 weeks a year they have to be involved in baseball and then one day at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
But I thought the passing thing... Now, the other story that came out last week was Adam Schefter was under consideration and that he was going to be like the ultimate insider. I don't know, that was a little, corny.
Schefter does love the NBA.
Yeah.
He's infamous for playing a lot of DFS NBA during the season.
To be an insider on the NFL and then have to worry about the NBA at the same time, that seems to be a little far-fetched. But no, I'm not surprised by Shams getting that job.
Now, do you like Shams getting the job is the other question. Like, do you think that was a good fit?
You know what I find interesting? Look, I'm not the number one NBA fan. Mm-hmm. Like I like the Sixers. I'll follow it. So
Sixers play tonight, by the way.
I don't have this
on TV.
On TV.
Yeah,
very exciting.
NBC Philadelphia. What else are they airing? Right. Another Michael Barkan rant?
But it stuns me from afar. It's like, I love the NFL. Like I don't do Ian Rappaport versus versus Adam Schefter. Like, it's just information.
Well, this
guy's
is a
talking
whole
to agents, just being like, here you go.
This is a whole thing in that world. Like,
It's
I'm
weird
pretty
to me.
in that world
You like that,
of
huh?
the sports media, sports business. And what is the value? What value did Woj bring to ESPN? Like, what is the value of him and his Woj bomb putting it out 2 minutes before the team confirms it? Like, what kind of value do you place on a newsbreaker?
Well, then what's the value of bringing in
Not
Shams?
much. I would say not much. It's more Twitter-based, X-based.
But then that's a whole other thing is they say, like, you are taking information and putting it on a platform that your organization doesn't even own.
Right, but I'm sure that there's a lot of metrics that show that because you have that credibility, now we're going to tune into ESPN's midday programming, NBA's pregame show programming, because if you're a team that you feel like is going to make a move, whether it be in the offseason or midseason, you want to tune in to see what this guy has to say.
Well,
it's just a way of pulling those people in.
Is it the information that he brings to the table, or is he just another talking head for ESPN?
Well, I think it's like, for instance, what is the value of a play-by-play guy? Like, do you watch because of so-and-so is the play-by-play guy, or are you going to watch the game no matter who the play-by-play guy is?
I don't watch a game because there is a certain broadcast team on, but I do feel, because I am someone that cares very much about like media members and the way that this gets done. I mean, hell, Crossing Broad, Radio Wars.
Mm-hmm.
That's our whole thing, right? But I will certainly say if there's a game featuring two mediocre teams and it has the right broadcast booth, like, I'm in. Like, I could listen to Kevin Harlan call anything.
Yeah. But I think, but the question is what is the data showing to say having Shams as our insider is going to make us money? Because he puts out the tweet first. Because ESPN does not like to give somebody else the credit.
Correct.
Like, it's never, Shams Charania was the first to report it. It's always ESPN has confirmed.
Yes.
Right, they confirmed other reports.
Right. So
now there's no competition for ESPN. I mean, they own Shams now. Who's next? Who's the competition?
Chris Haynes would be the other guy. He's like the third guy, but he's a free agent now as well.
Right. So who are they competing with information-wise now?
Well, that's why a lot of people were wondering, are they going to just take somebody from within? Although Shams, if he was at the Athletic.
Well, you know what's going to happen. You know the other competitor in this space, it's going to be the sports books.
Well, that's where Shams was too. He was with the Athletic and FanDuel. So
there are certain brands that are going all in on these insiders because it ties in so naturally to what they're offering.
Yeah, well, and like the other thing is like, okay, so TNT is losing the NBA. Does NBC go and get a newsbreaker? Do they find someone to be their guy? Does Amazon Prime kind of get that guy? Because now games are going to go to Amazon Prime.
Mike,
in a year.
I will say that NBC has started that pattern already because they went out and scooped up Nicole Auerbach from the Athletic, and now she is she's not just college football, she's their college sports insider to the point where they have her every time they go in studio now for anything college related. She's there. So I could totally see NBC scooping up Haynes.
I don't know. I mean, you probably would know this more about like what's the value of a newsbreaker to,
I think it's about just
Anthony
organizational
would get some hockey
credibility,
stuff for you guys, right?
Yeah. Because that's what happens. I mean, if you're Crossing Broad and you were breaking stories about the Flyers that other outlets weren't, it was like, okay, the Flyers especially, they are sort of underserved here. The Flyers are not the top priority for a lot of sites. So if you're a Flyers fan, you want some gossip, some information, some stuff that you're not getting elsewhere, you're going to Crossing Broad for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
or you were.
Yeah, I think Shams is the top guy, obviously, out there. He gets more of his information from that's the whole thing. They're getting it from the agents. Woj had his relationships with certain agents, and Shams has his certain relationships.
Well, I like when the football writers get the same information. It all goes out together, and it's like, deal done by, and then they list the agent name. Like, I wonder where you got this scoop from.
Yes.
Like, you're not even trying to hide it anymore.
Well, that's the big place, or a big thing is like, your relationships with agents, and, I know, and this is a lot. Now that we're in inside baseball, Woj is a CAA guy, and there's a lot of people in that pipeline that have the same representation that are giving him information. So, all right, what else we got?
By the way, if you do want that Flyers inside information, go to 97.3ESPN.com and get it from Kevin Durso.
Durso stopped out here today, by the way.
I'm looking at Durso right now in the studio.
Yeah, Durso was here. He's going to be a father. Just him and his wife just announced they're having a child, so congratulations to Durso. And Durso, the grind begins for him Friday night. They're in Vancouver.
That's right. Mike, story number 2. So all of the NFC East teams won yesterday. I know most people might have heard about the Cowboys, but I'm still perplexed how the Seahawks coughed up that game to the Giants yesterday, and Washington manhandled the Browns. So your guys' thoughts on all of the NFC East winning while the Eagles were at home?
Well, I didn't watch the second half of the Dallas game. I will tell you, I tapped out at that point, but I wasn't all that impressed with what I saw in the first half. But I will give them credit for fighting back and winning that game with 20 seconds left. But it seems that there's a little something going on there between CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. That's one takeaway.
That was more lip reading last night, yeah. I believe CD said subpar throw.
That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
It looked like he said subpar throw or something to that effect was what it looked like. And then, of course, he doesn't throw the ball to him in the game-winning drive. That's
right.
one. I said all offseason that if the kid Daniels could play, that Washington team was legit. It looks like he can play, and so far they're legit. Now,
kind of curious to see if the betting markets catch up to the Commanders a little bit. I looked at the lines yesterday, and I see Commanders at home with all this hype about this kid, a 3-point favorite over the Browns. And I was thinking to myself,
yesterday.
Yeah, I'm like, how is this possible? I'm like, this screams Cleveland. And then what unfolded. It was a catastrophe for the Browns. I do wonder, like, are we going to get a correction on this team eventually? Right now, the Eagles are still favored to win the NFC East, by the way. You taking that bet?
Probably. And the problem with the Washington, I don't know, man. Like last year, C.J. Stroud, there was a time, I remember I was sitting right here, and I said, it was like week 11, 12, and I said, right now, that's the guy I'm betting to win MVP. And at some point, it just kind of runs out on them. Yeah. The long season kind of hits you at some point. By the way, Nico Collins got hurt week to week now. That hurts there. Because when he went out last night, the pass game changed for C.J. Stroud because he's my fantasy quarterback, or yesterday, so I'm noticing that difference there as well. But I do believe in this Washington team. They're always kind of a pain in the ass for the Eagles, too. So when they play against each other, they've been a pain in the ass with, whoever's been the quarterback down. Sam Howell rips them up.
Yeah.
And now you put a legitimate guy in there. I don't love that matchup for Philadelphia. But the Giants, too, by the way, the WVU wide receiver gets the block, scoops it up and takes it to the house. Wheaton.
That was a great – even after they got down to the 1 in the first quarter, they fumble. Seattle brings it back for a touchdown, and then they wind up winning the game.
But for them to win that game without Neighbors –
it's impressive. And, you go back to last Thursday night, they're a drive away from beating the Cowboys.
Their defense is legit, though.
They were in the game with the Commanders. That team is not it's not a dumpster fire Giants team.
They just don't have a lot of offensive prowess.
No.
They don't have a lot of talent, but they got some studs on defense.
Yeah.
Their defense is very good. And they're the kind of teams you worry about sometimes. They can just hang around the game, especially with Philadelphia's inconsistent defensive outputs.
This is the month.
No pass rush.
This is the month for the Eagles. That schedule.
Yeah.
Cleveland, the Giants.
Jacksonville won yesterday.
Jacksonville.
Yes, Jacksonville finally won
after giving up 24
Cincinnati.
straight.
See, Cincinnati's what, 1-5?
1-4.
1-4, but you feel like that team's scary.
Yeah, you just wonder, though, if they can't get a win before they see the Eagles, it just reaches a point where...
The most curious decision of the weekend, though, is Buffalo. What were they doing?
Clock management at the end of the game.
That was horrible.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That was so dumb.
But we talk about take the points, Nick, and all these stuff, and you see the way they managed the last, 25 seconds of that game? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, McDermott's another guy that good coach, look at the record, always has his team competitive, but, he has his moments where he just feels like he gives away 2 or 3.
All right, what else we got?
Finally, Mike, I want to ask you because the WNBA playoffs have seen about 1 million viewers drop off since Caitlin Clark has been knocked out of the postseason, but she is going the Steph Curry route this offseason. Caitlin Clark will be participating in the Annika Sorenstam Pro-Am in November. So I want to ask you guys, Caitlin Clark, who she will not tell anybody what her her golf handicap is, but she claims that she uses hybrid clubs, which apparently has impressed people like Zach Johnson, who plays on the PGA Tour. So, would you guys tune in to see Caitlin Clark play golf on November 12th?
I didn't really even watch her play a lot of basketball, let alone play golf. Now, that's not to say I did see, put it this way, I watched more of her than I watched of that league in its existence.
Did you watch more of her at Iowa, though,
yes,
when she got to, as opposed to WNBA?
But not even that. I watched very little of her, period. For no other reason than there's just other things on at that. Like I said, and this is another thing we talk about on the podcast. We've been talking about it on the podcast the last couple of weeks. The WNBA didn't do themselves any favors putting their games on up against football on Sunday.
Which was poor.
They played yesterday on a Sunday afternoon.
Nobody cares.
Got Vegas playing New York, the two biggest teams in your league, and you're up against football. And they kept doing this. They did this. And by the way, the week that Clark played on Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock, she had like almost 2 million viewers. You got to give her credit for that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The
but I have
viewership.
No interest in watching her play golf, I don't think.
Okay, so you don't care. Bob, Pete, any interest?
No.
I watch her take a swing.
I didn't even have any interest in watching Steph Curry play golf.
Watch her take a swing just to say, all right.
It's November 12th. That's a Tuesday.
Okay.
I guess.
On a Tuesday, maybe.
The tournament's Tuesday through Saturday.
On a Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm in on a Tuesday.
That's what I was saying before.
Minutes.
The WNBA should have played their playoff games Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. That's your nights. You stay away from the others. Everybody else
only play on Tuesday nights.
Just know your role.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday.
Know your role. Stay out of the way.
Season's over before the MAC starts, middle of the week.
All other leagues, not just the WNBA. Baseball, don't play on. The Phillies, NLCS, if they make the NLCS, game 1 is on Sunday.
I mean, hockey's big opening night tomorrow night.
There you go, yeah.
Wait. Now, you guys were telling me that somebody played in Prague. I knew there was somebody playing in Prague, but that game already happened?
Sabres-Devils, 2 games.
Two games, yeah.
Yeah, they counted.
And Devils won both of them.
It's like when baseball goes over and plays a game in Japan.
But I did not see the results of those games. I didn't heard nothing about
Devils won both of them.
Yeah.
Damn, I missed them.
Devils
I'm going to Prague.
There you go.
In August.
Globetrotter.
Yeah. All right, we're going to wrap up the show from the Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar, booking games coming up next. Here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN.
It's this Mike Gill.
Keeping the fans entertained and happy.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, 5:53, getting ready to get out of here. It's time for the Bet365 play of the day. Josh, what's the updated standings?
The updated standings after a 6-0 Friday for Mike Gill. He is 32-15.
Pretty good.
That's a pretty good clip right there, man.
It's not bad.
Yep. Chris Olave tonight, over 59. Kamara, over 65.5 rushing yards. I kind of like the Saints to win the game tonight.
I like the Saints outright tonight.
That's what I just said.
Yeah.
-6, right?
I just said I kind of like the Saints to win the game tonight.
I'm agreeing with you. Validating that.
I thought you just heard me wrong.
No, I'm supporting your take.
Okay.
Bob's trying to be a supportive co-host, Mike.
Yeah. Relax.
We're on the same page.
All right. Are we? Maybe not. Maybe I like the Chiefs now.
Worthy over 3.5 catches tonight.
Xavier Worthy.
Yep. They got nobody else to throw the ball to. That's
Kelsey.
Sure, but yeah, we gave you 6 plays on Friday, all winners. Bob Wanker.
Maybe you come back down to earth tonight.
Could be.
Maybe you get humbled a little bit.
Time to fade.
All right, that's it for us. Bob Wankel, thanks a bunch. As always, we have fun. Next week, Eagles, Browns, could be Phillies, game 1. A Monday here at the Fanatic Sportsbook. This time of the year, you can't beat it. Got a good crowd here watching the little Guardians and Tigers. Nothing in the 7th. Baseball, playoffs.
These bullpens now, boy.
Baby. Back here next Monday, we'll be recapping the Browns, Eagles, and the Phillies. Hopefully, well, either way, we'll be recapping the Phillies because I guess that series could be done on Wednesday. They sweep it out. You think they do?
Phil's in 4?
Yeah, maybe.
I got Phil's in 5. I'm Phil's in 5.
All right, we'll recap it all. And then tomorrow, of course, we're back here on the Sports Pass Live on 97.3 ESPN. Have a great night, everybody.
Freedom and flexibility. That's what you want in a healthcare plan. And with Humana's Medicare Advantage PPO plans, you can see any doctor in the country who accepts Medicare, including specialists, with no referrals needed. Plus, you can go in and out of network for the same copay for doctor's visits. Learn more at gethumana.com. Humana, a more human way to healthcare. Humana is a Medicare Advantage PPO organization with a Medicare contract. Enrollment in any Humana plan depends on contract renewal.